This meeting of the Cascade Charter Township Planning Commission to order. It's Monday, December 4th, 2023, 7 p.m. We do have a quorum here. A couple of our members are not able to join us tonight. Chris is gone for the month of December, so I'll fill in for him. And Alan is not able to join us tonight. So I'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. Amen. I have a motion to approve the current agenda.
I actually take exception to that, and I wanted to make a motion to table 2 of the articles this evening. Article number 11, the ordinance amendment. There is no documentation or anything in the packet. I don't know if that was an oversight. I think there was a mention that something would be attached later, so there's nothing to pre-read and come up to speed on that. Similarly, in Article 10, there's a memo from Foster Swift dated November 28th. And it says, on November 22nd, 2023, our office provided Cascade Charter Township, the township, with a memo regarding the procedures and standards to review a planning and zoning application for a special land use permit to develop a cemetery. That memo was not in our packet, so I don't believe I personally nor the other commission members have the procedures and standards to review the application. And without that, I would ask that Article 10 also be tabled until we have that in front of us.
I would second the motion insofar as Article 11. But with respect to Article 10, I would ask Maddie if the memo that we did receive from the law firm has any additional information that was not contained in the one which Member Bruno doesn't believe we received, or we did not receive.
If the newer one has more information?
Does the newer one contain the same information that was in the previously referenced?
No, it's an expansion on the first because the first memo didn't address the questions I had asked him over the phone.
And is there information in the first memo that is not contained in the second memo?
Yes, but it is contained in my staff report. And I do have a copy of the memo. The first memo.
We should still address the public hearing in the matter because it's been notified and the public is here. I think we should still discuss I would be in favor of still discussing the article because the public has come out for that article.
I would be supportive of the public, but I have no intention of discussing the matter without legal counsel's opinion in front of me.
It's not an opinion. We haven't. So,
Mr. Chair, I believe Timmy has his hand up.
Mr. Norduck.
Yeah, I just, on Article 11, it's a simple housekeeping
you just skipped.
procedure here. We're just simply separating the bylaws from the ordinance. There's no changes to the ordinance. There's no changes to the bylaws. They're just being separated per legal advice.
This is something that this committee has been working towards for years, since I was chair.
It conflicts with statute. That's the only reason he said separate. So.
Okay. I think we need to take it one at a time. Let's start with the Article 11. I've got a motion on the floor. Do I hear support? Support. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so we've got, I'm counting 3 in favor. No, 4 in favor, 2 against.
No, I was opposed.
Who else? 2 opposed and 4 in favor. Okay, motion passes.
Motion to table, to be clear.
Motion to table, item number 11 is approved. Okay, let's back up to the next one on Article 10, case number 23-3800. Is your motion, you want to revise the motion?
Sure. I will retract my last motion. My new motion is that we table planning commissioner's discussion of the item, but we go ahead and allow the public to have their hearing.
Okay, do I hear support?
Support.
Okay, motion supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Oh, it's 3-3.
The motion fails.
Motion fails. Okay, so we'll still move ahead with that item. Okay,
So do we need to, do we have a motion to approve the current agenda with the one amendment deleting or tabling Article 11?
Didn't that motion do that?
I don't know.
all right, let's go back then.
Sure we did that.
Just made a motion to amend it. Now you should make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Okay,
I'll make a motion to approve the amended agenda.
Seconded.
motion moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we're moving ahead with a slightly shortened agenda. Okay, is there any conflict of interest by planning commission members?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it has recently been brought to my attention regarding Article 10 that one of the people that signed the application is a customer of my business. We take care of their lawn care at their home, and so I just want to disclose that. I didn't realize that until I got here today, but I just felt that it should be out there. I don't think it's a conflict necessarily, but that's up to you guys to decide.
I have a similar disclosure to make. Again, I don't believe this is a conflict, but I have toured the property to the immediate west of the property referenced in Article 10 with one of its owners. Don't believe it's a conflict, but I want to put that out there.
Okay. Any other conflicts?
May I inquire, Joe, was it ancillary to this or is it related to the subject
Not
matter?
related to this at all. No.
I don't see a conflict with that at all.
Okay,
Scott, is it the lead applicant or what's the just?
It's one of the applicants listed on the application. Their name's on it, so it's on this letter that we have in front of us today as well. And I just, I have to disclose that there's a relationship there. It has nothing to do with this or this entity. It just happens to be that a representative of the entity is somebody I've done business with.
I'm not bothered by that.
neither am I. Okay, let's move on to Article 5. Approve the minutes of the November 13, 2023 meeting. Can I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve as drafted.
Seconded.
If I may, I think there was one correction that I wanted to highlight, if we could. I believe in Article 7, we have Chris Corey's name spelled differently in 2 paragraphs, in the first and in the 4th paragraph. I don't know what the correct spelling is, but we should try to at least be consistent in the way we spell the name. Hopefully we get it correct.
Good eye.
Thank you.
Okay, with that motion and second, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None noted. Motion passes. I'd like to now acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak, but comments are limited to 3 minutes per speaker on non-agenda items. And if you do want to make a comment, please come up and give us your address and your name loud and clear and speak into the microphone. Does anybody want to make any comments? Yes, sir. Yeah, right here. Name and address.
Good evening. My name's David Bolt. I'm at 6855 Thornview Drive Southeast. And I work downtown for an organization. We help with housing. It's Next Step West Michigan. Not sure if you've heard of us, but I've studied extensively the tiny home movement and also ADUs, accessory dwelling units. And I'm wondering, I talked to someone in zoning today, and I'm wondering if the committee or the board has considered ADUs in Cascade Township, if you've done any study on them, and if there have been others who have been interested. My interest stems from kids that are leaving the house, leaving the nest, having a big house, and others in our community really suffering from housing shortage, and wondering if there's been any talk of that in Cascade Township as far as allowing ADUs, especially ADUs that would be potentially for rent. And so I'm wondering if there's any committees or subcommittees that have studied that subject.
That's what I'm aware of.
I'm not
Good thought.
Okay, would anybody consider studying that? I know that would be probably a long discussion. I'm sure there's some conflicts with other residents, neighbors, but I think to increase housing density, to allow perhaps owner occupied housing and ADUs on the same property, it's a pretty unique model. So just wondering if that would be considered at Cascade Township in the future.
Probably a question for the board. Not the planning
Not the planning
commission.
commission,
Okay. So bring that before the board at some meeting,
board of trustees.
Board of Trustees. All
When's your
right.
next meeting?
13th.
13th? Okay,
Next Wednesday.
okay.
You
All
could just call the office as well and possibly get an answer prior.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks for thinking.
You.
critically.
Any other comments? Okay, let's move on to next item, case number 23-3798, Salmon, 6390 Cascade Road.
Hello, Planning Commission. We have an applicant for us today that was tabled from a previous meeting, Alan Salmon, at 6390 Cascade Road. This is in our R1 district, and he is on about 1.9 acres. He is seeking approval with a special use permit for an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet. He previously received a special land use permit for his property across the street, and he is now building on the south side. He's requesting a 1,440 square foot accessory building, so it's a 30 by 48 with a height to the midpoint of 17 feet and 4 inches. The placement of the barn is in his backyard. On the site plan, you can see that. It's kind of on the southeast side of his property. And he is meeting all of the required setbacks based on his height. So indicated in letter D, he would be behind the home, which is required for the front yard. He would be over 100 feet from his west side property line. For the east side, he's at 40 feet, and then he's over 30 feet from the south property line. He is on city water and sewer, so there's no utilities that would be conflicting with this building. And the applicant has not narrowed down exactly what material his extension of the driveway would be to approach the barn. So I would ask that you guys discuss that with him if you have concerns or specific requests. When we look at our criteria for approval, he is intending to use the building for personal storage, personal woodworking project, and having roof mounted solar panels. The design is proposed to match his existing home, which is about 3,700 square feet. So in comparison to the home, the accessory building would be a smaller size than his home. And then when we compare that to our accessory building inventory for this R1 district, it would be coming in under that 2170 square feet, which is the average. When we look into impact on neighboring properties, he does own the parcel directly to the west, which is currently vacant. The property owner to the east has called and hasn't mentioned that they see issue, but they also mentioned possibly coming tonight to give comments, but they are a significant distance away and there is trees screening the properties from each other. So I was able to determine that there wouldn't be negative impacts on neighboring parcels. To the south is also a permanent common element as part of this PUD to the south. So there's that buffer that would be not changing or developed in the future. So based on these findings, you know, he was under that average square footage for an accessory building over 832 square feet approved in the R1 district, and that it was not going to be negatively impacting the neighbors. I would recommend approval with our conditions that he doesn't operate a business out of this accessory building, that he's not using it for anyone to be living in, and that his outdoor lighting would adhere to our standards. And then whatever you guys would like to set for his driveway, if any.
Do the members have any questions for Madison?
Madison, is it your understanding that this building is essentially a duplicate of the same building he has across that same road there that you can see from the road?
It's a very similar structure that he's building to move what he has in his existing one to his new home.
We can ask him that too.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Is the home under construction right now?
It's I think it's nearly done, but I would refer to the applicant. Yeah.
Okay.
He's got all his permits issued right now.
I was out there today. There's a foundation. I think that's it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I may
Yes.
ask a question.
Member Reese.
With respect to the applicant's other building, are you aware of any complaints?
I have not received complaints on Mr. Sigmund's accessory building.
Thank you.
Any other members have questions for Madison? Thank you. Would the owner or representative, Mr. Solomon, like to come up and give us a little background?
Good evening. As Madison says, I live in the property immediately to the north, which is 6350 Cascade Road. And I built a barn of the same square footage there a few years ago. And again, as you mentioned, the proportion of the barn to the square footage of the current house, the barn's actually bigger than the house. And that was a bone of contention at the last meeting.
Wonder why.
It was.
So this time we don't have that issue to confront. And it is simply that, yes, once I complete my new house and move into it, I want to take everything from the existing barn and be able to put it in my new barn. The only difference is that the pitch on the existing barn is 812 and the pitch on the new barn is 612, which was to accommodate the height restriction and meet the setback ordinance. And in terms of what the barn is going to be sided with, as the barn is, my current barn is probably 350 feet behind my house. This barn is going to be 40 feet behind my house. And so the goal is to use the same siding on the barn that I'm going to use on my house, and also have an architectural element on the front of the barn that will tie the barn to the house so that it is something that is in harmony on the site.
Great, great. Okay, any questions for Mr. Solomon?
I have one. It says on here, your woodworking machines do create a lot of noise. Are you planning on running a business out of this?
No, that was an issue last time as well. And no, it's purely for private use.
And you're doing the woodworking now and the neighbors haven't complained?
No, in fact, my neighbor immediately to the east of the new house, he gets excited when he hears my machines because he wants to come over and see what I'm doing. So,
Show and tell.
right. So no, I haven't had any issues with anybody.
A couple questions. So I was out today, your
Yep.
current barn is gorgeous. So
Oh, thank
so
you.
It's got a nice, and the machinery inside, I can see why your neighbor's excited. You have some really nice, expensive machinery, all that's
Thank
new.
you. Yeah.
But I was given pause by the pallets and pallets and pallets of wood product. I mean, you had, I think, 1/2 inch square rod or dowels, I guess. Probably 1,000 on a pallet. It looks more like a production as opposed to
It's-
self-consumption.
So you probably noticed my sawmill there. And
Correct,
my
yeah.
hobby is milling lumber. That's what I like to do. And you can tell by the piles of lumber that are milled at the back that I don't do anything with it except stare at it. And all of those 3/4 square, they're drying sticks.
Okay.
So when I mill something between each layer of boards, I put drying sticks so it can air dry.
Okay.
And originally, everything that was outside, I used to own a small commercial building, and it was all stored indoors. But when I got divorced, we sold that, and it's been sitting outside ever since. So yeah, there is no commercial operation there whatsoever.
So you enjoy the task, but the end product just weathers and
Well, that wasn't the original intention, no. So, I mean, what I want to do now that I'm retired is to do the things that I've never really had the time to do before. And, I fancy that I'd like to try making furniture, and I have lots of lumber. So that's what I like to do. In fact, just in the last 2 weeks, I've had 2 other Cascade residents. No, one's an East Grand Rapids resident who've contacted me to ask if I can mill lumber for them. And I told them I don't do it commercially. But if they have one log that they want me to cut, they can bring it over and I'll cut it for them. But I mean, I love doing it. So that's why I do it.
Okay. And then my second question, on your site plan, there is a blue, I was going to call it a rectangle, I think it's a square. So in the southwest corner, can you tell me what that
Yeah.
signifies?
So if you look, there is a blue line, a much larger blue line around the outside of the property.
Yep.
And then that smaller box in the southwest corner. The blue line was an indication from the architect about where we should take out trees.
Okay.
And I actually challenged him on the blue box in the bottom left corner because it's not going to interfere with anything. And so, I mean, all the trees that are coming out are out now. And so that was really just to delineate the buildable area not the buildable area, but the working area.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Make a motion to go to public hearing.
Do I hear support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're now open for public hearing. If you want to make a comment, you're welcome to come up, give us your name, your address, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes, no more.
Make a motion to close public hearing if there's nobody on Zoom.
Anybody on Zoom? Okay,
Support.
moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Okay, do we have discussion on this from members?
Well,
I like the hobby aspect. When he says, I'm interested someday in building furniture, that gives me pause because it's pretty hefty production equipment, and he could easily become a major furniture shop. So I guess as long as we have that clause in there, and when we
and this is why I asked my question to Madison, because we talked about this one for probably close to an hour last time around for that exact reason.
Yeah, but
And
I think times have changed. He says he's retired. He has time to make furniture now. So that's just
I suppose, but the equipment's there. Obviously, there's evidence of it being used there. There's been no negative feedback to the township. So that's all I was trying to verify is what's transpired over the last couple of years.
Okay, any other comments by planning commission members? Any questions, statements? Okay, I'd like to entertain a motion. Member Engel,
I would make a motion in case 22-3798 to approve the type 1 special use permit to build an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet with the staff recommendation conditions of the building is not to be used to operate a business or any type of commercial endeavor. I would add that. Building is not used as dwelling, and all outdoor lighting would adhere to the Cascade Township zoning standards.
Support.
Moved and supported. Any other comments? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed. Member Bruno. A motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Solomon. Okay, next case, number 233795, Josh Baker.
I'll present your application for you and then, yeah, thank you.
Got a lot of paper up there. I was starting to worry.
I know. I'll just put the most pertinent piece. And consider to where. All right. We have an applicant for 5441 36th Street. This is a site plan review. It does not require a public hearing this evening. This is a review for a 12,000 square foot addition to an office and warehouse space. This is located in our transitional industrial zoning district, and it is amongst other transitional industrial and industrial uses.
Maddie, may I interrupt you?
Please.
And under the requested action, you have site plan review and approval. Is
Yes.
this only a site plan review or is it also an approval?
Both.
It is, okay.
Like you are reviewing the site plan to make a motion on approval.
I think what he's getting at is there's no preliminary review on this one.
Correct.
That's just a one and done.
Yes.
Gotcha.
So the applicant is requesting a site plan approval tonight to construct a 12,000 square foot addition to their existing office and warehouse space. The use of the property is for business storage. The applicant indicated that they own AT&T stores. They use this for different types of storage of inventory that's been removed or is part of renovations for other stores, as well as storage for personal cars. And the applicant can speak to that use a little further if needed. Indicated in our plans is an addition that will be for a trucking dock with an expansion of the parking lot and an addition of the retention pond at the back. We have reviewed this site plan. I inherited it from our previous planning director, so it's kind of half and half review, but we've come together and have a review under section 2107. The proposed use does require an increase in parking spaces. In your staff report, you see that the proposed addition based on the formula in our ordinance would require an additional 30 spaces. This is before I received a document today clarifying the use further so that the new calculation would be that the office space is an addition of 4,490 square feet, which requires 3 parking spaces for every 1,000 square feet added. So that's 14 parking spaces when you do the calculation. And then for the warehouse space, they would have a total of 13,400 square feet of warehouse space, which requires 0.67 parking spaces per 1,000 square foot added, which is 9 spaces in this calculation. So that equals 23 spaces total required. I can pass this to you guys or put it on the screen. So in my staff report, it indicates that the plan does have 23 spots and they were deferring 7 spaces, but because we've clarified which portions of the building is used for what, and based on this calculation that we have, we can now determine that they do only need the 23 spaces. So tonight I can say that the 23 spots on the site plan would meet the parking criteria required for the expansion. If there's questions on that, let me know. And we have had a site plan review by our township engineer. So included in your packet was that review to be in compliance with our stormwater ordinance. He did say that he was comfortable approving this, and that the report says that it would be contingent on the applicant providing a geotechnical report with soil test data. We did provide the report to the applicant, so they may have more information this evening if you would like to ask them questions on that, but they are aware of this. There's no new access points being proposed to this site. They would use their existing access, which included in your packet, we show that shared easement with the parcel to the east. We have also submitted this to the Gerald R. Ford Airport staff. They've been made aware and they did provide comments based on lighting and detention ponds, and that was included in your packet as well. The lighting plan submitted does meet our ordinance, so they are not exceeding the 5 candles required. And then the submitted landscaping plan does meet our requirements, but just as extra assurance, we do typically require that landscape bond of $5,000 be submitted upon approval to make sure we can verify that that is seen through. The fire department has also seen this application and they also indicate that they have no concerns. For the TI district, the site plan has been reviewed for building height, area, and setbacks, and all of those standards have also been met. So this final application we see here today, after all this review, I would recommend that we can approve this site plan for the 12,000 square foot addition with the conditions that they execute a stormwater agreement based on the engineer's review, and that they provide a landscape bond for $5,000. Are there any questions?
Can you adjust the focus on your calculations? Well, I can't see them.
Yes. Is that better? I can also hand it to you if you'd like it.
Much better.
So the office equals, that first line is supposedly the square footage of their current building. Is that correct?
So the expansion would be is all of this back here. So this mix of office and warehouse space. Previously, it was applied for as all warehouse, which is why our calculation came out to 30 spaces. But because they are adding that office space, it has the smaller requirement. So the number of spaces ended up being reduced to 23.
Was that adjustment made after you informed them of the need for 30 parking spaces?
Correct. So we could clarify with the applicant this evening if needed. I just received this tonight, so.
I guess I'm just somewhat confused because I thought that graphic there that you're drawing on is captured as existing site plan. So I thought that's the existing building.
That's just the existing building. The
This
warehouse
calculation?
is up there. No, the calculation is everything, Madison, but that little sketch there with the spaces is just the existing building. So the proposed 12,000 square foot is in addition to what's shown.
I see what you're saying.
Big addition.
Sorry. So as shown, our calculations aren't correct. So it's 12,000 is the addition. I can't get the math to work.
Yes,
With what I have.
yeah, so it might need more clarification then.
Would you like me to?
Yeah, if you could,
Yeah.
on that same sheet, because like I'm a math guy and the math is not working.
Yeah,
So
Should give his name and address.
I'm Paul Henderson with Rosine and Associates.
Anderson?
Henderson with
Henderson.
an H, yes,
Okay.
sir. So this sketch is just dealing with the existing building. Okay, so up here, the total office in the existing is 4490. The warehouse space in the existing building is 1,400 square feet. The addition is 12,000 additional square feet of warehouse. So that's how we came up with these numbers. So
Yeah, keep going.
if, so with the office space, we're at a total of 4490 times 3 divided by 1,000, just under 14. So I rounded up to 14. And the warehouse calculation is similar. I rounded up. It was something less than that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for clarifying. Sorry for the confusion.
Okay, anything else?
So the 35,000 square feet of impervious surface is the new building, the old building, and all of the new asphalt surrounding the new construction?
Yes, where are you pulling this number from? The engineer report?
I think that's better.
Probably the.
Yes, total impervious surface, including driveway, loading bay, and parking lot improvements includes 35,993. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct. And Eric is comfortable with that, assuming they provide the requested report.
Yeah, that's what his report has summarized.
I'm not sure if this question is, oops, sorry.
Go ahead. Member Bruno?
I'm not sure if this question is for you or for the applicant, but in reading through the report here, it says, since it's a one and done, the applicant has been notified to confirm all permits and agreements with the neighboring parcel part of any surface improvements. I was out there today and the backhoe is already digging the trench for the loading dock. So am I to assume that that's done and you already have a building permit for that portion of it?
Come on up to the speaker.
It's well underway.
I may ask Mr. Burry.
Asphalt, I think.
Randy Burry is the general
So there was
contractor.
yeah, hi, guys. So the original, what was the guy's name that's not working with you anymore?
Right.
Brian Hilbert.
Ryan. Okay, so there was original loading dock that was already existing at that property. And we always were the intent of adding another loading dock. Now, nothing's been poured or nothing like that, but we did some elevations, but we had to do a compact test for the soil bearing point because we had to bring a lot of sand in. So the excavator was out there. I said, at the same time, can we just dig this thing out? Dig our boring test, which was done today. And I also got that approval for the weight load. So that's what you were seeing today happening. So,
Thank you.
okay,
Okay, thank you.
you're welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Member Reese?
So my background here, since it's a little dug up, it's kind of hard to tell visually. This site previously did not have anything to manage its stormwater on site because it predated our ordinance. That is the interpretation I see from the developer's representative, but I want to know what staff's opinion
Yes.
is as well. So we're really bringing the site up to
To
meet the
standard.
current standard.
Mhm.
So okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Madison?
One more. Sorry, I did all this on my phone. I usually use my laptop. No details or plans for modifying existing water or sanitary utilities are shown. So we normally require that. I don't see anywhere on these prints, sanitary sewer or water. I know that it's already an existing, but we typically see those for the addition as well.
Just on the site plan?
Yeah.
I
Don't believe there are any proposed plumbing fixtures in the addition. It's just strictly warehouse space.
Is it right along?
Yeah,
here?
just speaking to the mic.
So right along the side right here, there's a sewer line that's coming up, but it comes up out of the ground as a clean out. And it's actually sitting right about, can you see in the picture?
Oh, we have to shift to the right.
See my finger? So, okay, so on the existing sewer line, so it comes up from the major sewer, come across over here. We did some excavation trying to figure out where that was at, because it does have a bathroom right here in the existing building. So they dug that down, it's about 13 feet, maybe about 12'8". And there's a sewer line that came up, but it was broken. It was broken as we were digging, not from us, but from the previous situation. So right here, you're going to see a pipe that kind of comes up on an angle that's dropped down about 12 feet. And there's a clean out right there. So that's what's actually running out to the sewer. So when we were cleaning up this back area, because it was just a big fall, he was having a lot of washout right there. We brought some sand in here when we did the excavation back here on the new building. And we found that sewer line right there. So they ran a camera. We actually, I don't know, it wasn't Godwin, it was someone else, but they ran a camera to make sure that was a clear line, which it is. But they added that pipe up, extended it up for the future sewer. So obviously we can find it when we redig it, because there's a little bathroom, but we're just doing it so rough in. It's going to be a handicap bathroom right about here. But it's just going to do the roughing. He doesn't want to finish it at this time. Just kind of get the roughing, because we're pouring all the concrete, and that's 6 inches thick.
I think our site plans require, is it possible to get these prints updated with the sewer and
Sure. It may even be on our, we did the survey, the original topographic survey. It may be shown on there.
It might be one.
Oftentimes, records aren't available or incomplete on where things
Yeah.
are, so that's a little challenging sometimes.
But I know the city likes to make sure they don't have long runs. They like loops. So it'd be nice to see how long the
Sure.
run is.
Sure.
It sounds like it's now you are adding a plumbing fixture to the warehouse. So it'd be nice to see
I know
that.
you got,
Yeah.
I think you got some plumbing plans on here.
Yeah, there were some dimensions on urinals and handicap. So I assumed you're putting new plumbing in, but I couldn't find any of the water.
Yeah, just the
lines or
rough
sewer.
plumbing at this time. That's all he's doing.
We can update our site plan if that's a.
Yeah, that's
a
a,
concern.
we definitely
Yeah.
can do that for
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah, it
Okay.
is listed in our site.
Any questions for Madison? Oh, anybody online? Okay.
And I guess I have one last one. I'm dominating, but I apologize. Since this is a one and done, it says a maintenance agreement and long-term maintenance plan are required before construction begins. Do we have that? Like, do they have all of their ducks in a row, all these requirements? We're voting. This isn't a preliminary. Seems like there's a long checklist of making sure everything's checked.
So typically the stormwater maintenance agreement comes in after approval, similarly to how we approved Wormies. I just recently received that and it was signed. It has to be filed with the county and reviewed by us prior to that. So I'm assuming their plan is to submit once it's approved. And we would approve any building permits without having that in hand.
Okay. Any other comments by members? Member Reese?
I would make a motion regarding case number 233795 that we approve the site plan as presented with the following recommendations: that they execute the stormwater agreement and provide a landscaping bond for $5,000 and get updated plans to staff that show the location of the water and sewer utilities.
Do I hear support?
Support.
Any further comments? Let's vote then. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Passes 6-0. Congratulations.
We're keeping score tonight.
Thank you for coming. Okay. Next one, case number 233801 Epic Homes at 3660 Cherry Lane. Madison.
Zoom in on items if needed again. Okay, we have Troy Schrock with Epic Homes applying with the Schroten-Bohr household at 3660 Cherry Lane. This is in our farmland preservation district and they're on about 10.2 acres. This is about the corner of 36th and Cherry Lane. The applicant is requesting approval for an accessory building exceeding 832 square feet. This was a two-part approval, so they were at the Zoning Board of Appeals this past month and received a variance for the placement of their proposed accessory building to be within the north side yard setback. And I've included in your packet that review and approval letter. The other setbacks of the building are in compliance, and so the proposed building is totaling to 2,496 square feet. Sorry.
2640.
Yes. Back to A. They're proposing a 40 by 64 pole barn, which is 2560. And that is with a height of 17 feet to the midpoint of the roof, which was part of the variance approval for the setback. And then attached to the barn is a lean-to that is, yes.
You're going to say it was a lean-to of 8 by 64. So my question is the 8 part of the 40? Or is it not? Is it really 48 by 64?
48 by 64.
Okay, because we generally refer to that covered area as part of the structure.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that there was a slight separation, but that it would be
So the building is 48 by 64.
correct.
Thank you.
That's how we count the footprint.
Right.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, for a grand total of 3,072 square feet.
Okay.
So the acreage on the property does permit them to have 3 accessory buildings. So if they had 3 832 by right built accessory buildings, it would total to 2,496 square feet. They are seeking 1 accessory building at the total of 3,072 square feet. The parcel does not appear to have any steep hills but the east end of the property does kind of gradually move downhill into a little bit of a wetland. And the topographical map in your packet does, speak to that topography change. And then the applicant can speak to the stormwater maintenance on the property because part of their variance approval was for a water diversion plan to be submitted at the time of building permits. So the owner has submitted a letter with their request stating their unique situation. They are requesting this to have a recreational area. It would be for personal storage and recreation. The applicant is in a wheelchair, so they are requesting this as an additional space to be accessible for him to spend time with his family and have it be accessible to his wheelchair. He can speak further to that if you guys have questions. I believe he and his wife are both here this evening. The site plan does indicate that they'll be adding an extension of the existing drive. The material was not indicated, so I would also refer to them to clarify that. And I did receive 1 letter of public comment, which I included in your packets. And then when I look into the criteria for a special use permit, as I did for the previous, we look at section 17. Intended use of the building is for personal storage and recreation. The location, it is within that side yard setback that they did receive a variance for, and it is a pole barn construction. I did not see, I see in the image, it looks like red steel siding. I didn't see that it was made to match the building of the home currently being built, but the applicant may be able to clarify. The house is currently under construction and is approved for 2,578 square feet. And the accessory building inventory for the Farmland Preservation District our inventory would obviously just include residentially approved accessory buildings exceeding 832 square feet. Just wanted to make that clarification. That would be different than an ag exempt building that might be larger in the vicinity. And the average for this district for an accessory building would be 1,857 square feet. So this application tonight would be the largest approved accessory building in the district, exceeding that by almost more than 1.5 times. The next criteria considered is the type and kind of principal and accessory buildings and structures located on the properties which are adjoining. In the area, there are several farm buildings to the property to the north. They have some old ag buildings that are grandfathered in. To the west, there is an accessory building that was approved with Planning Commission at 960 square feet. Also a 2,720 square foot pole barn. And then others in the area kind of for residential ranged between 600 and 800. So there's a little bit of a variety here also because we're on the boundary of ARC and farmland and then ag exempted ag buildings. So there's a mix of accessory buildings in this area. I spoke to the topography already and the vegetation in the area. So it's previously farmland and is now has a home being built on it, and they're proposing this accessory building. When we're considering the neighbors to the south have not built, so it is vacant. To the north, there is the old farmstead, which would have been this old farmland property connected to it. And then there is another parcel to the northwest that is also vacant and proposed to start building a home in the near future. So considering neighbors, the most impacted neighbor would be the neighbor directly to the north that has the closest proximity to this accessory building. And they have spoken on their opinion on that. I don't know if they're here this evening, but they were at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. Finally, looking at points of access, again, extended drive surface was not indicated, but there wouldn't be any sight lines blocked. It's way off of Cherry Lane, so it wouldn't be blocking any view of neighbors along Cherry Lane at the front. So in my review, because I couldn't determine that each factor was met, I did have to recommend that this be denied. Based on the findings that it exceeds the largest accessory building approved by the Planning Commission in this district, and that it may negatively impact the neighbors to the north. But should the Planning Commission wish to grant this special use, because of the unique circumstances of the property owner, I would recommend our standards that the building not be used to run a business, that the building not be used for a dwelling space, and that the outdoor lighting adheres to the Cascade Township standards. And that would be in addition to the conditions set on it from the Zoning Board of Appeals, which does require trees planted on the north side of the property and a water diversion plan, just to note for you guys.
The setback from the north property line is 19?
17 feet,
I thought,
21 feet from the north property line.
okay, so it's a 19-foot exception from the 40-foot setback that's normally,
Correct.
okay.
Yes.
What is the distance between the pole barn and the house? Not on the site plan.
I would refer to the applicant for that distance.
Okay.
Sorry.
Any other questions?
You mentioned a couple letters. You said that I think you referenced there in the packet, but I don't see them. You said a unique circumstance letter from the applicant, as well as a letter of, it wasn't clear if it was support or not, maybe from a neighbor. I don't see either of those letters. Am I missing it or?
This letter wasn't included in your packet?
It was not.
No.
It's the main part of the
Can you put that
application.
up on the screen for us?
Yes.
That'd be great. Thank you.
So we got that letter, another letter you've referenced, and then you said that the neighbor to the north got up and spoke at the ZBA meeting. Is that a third opinion, or is that the other letter you're referencing?
That is a third opinion and a letter. So they spoke at the meeting and submitted an email.
Okay. Do you have those other two that you can put up so we can kind of see all three? Obviously, the applicant is
I
in
don't
support of
have
his
it on
own
me.
issue. Are the other two in support? At least can we summarize that?
I believe one was in support and one was asking questions about the stormwater. And that was more related to the zoning board of appeals, so I don't know if it's necessary to submit to you guys. The applicant can speak to that too, because I know they've had a lot of conversation with the neighbors following the previous meeting.
I know at the zoning board of appeals, this is a fairly lengthy discussion because I
Yes.
was there.
Yes.
And one of the key issues, well, there are really two key issues as I saw. Number one, screening from the property to the north, the farm. And we resolved that, I believe, with the 5 trees 10 feet high, planted along that north side between the property line and the barn. And the other issue was drainage and making sure that we had some positive drainage that went to the east, to the low-lying areas, and requested that a study be done on that, which I believe Eric looked at and reviewed and said it looked good.
Mhm.
So,
Member Reese.
This is kind of overlapping a little bit into Article 11, I'm afraid, but I've brought this up in the past and I'll bring it up again because it seems to be happening more and more often. But I have a little bit of a concern. I asked for legal opinion on this a number of years ago about items going in front of the ZBA prior to the planning commission. I never got a response on that legal opinion, but if a person's only appeal is to the ZBA and the ZBA has already ruled on it, I kind of feel like there's already been a
Precedent
set, and the planning commission, I feel, is somewhat cornered in these types of situations. And I've asked for this a couple of times, and I would like it if somebody would find the answer on that, because it seems like we have the tail wagging the dog a little bit.
Mhm.
And I have
Can
to
look into
second
it.
that concern because I'm a ZBA member that sat there and listened to all this.
Right.
And
And that's a
I think
good
it's
point too,
Commission first.
because I think section 23, I could be mistaken on this, but I think section 23 says that if a ZBA member handles a case at the ZBA that comes in front of the planning commission,
Oh, here.
I don't think they can be here. So these are things that we need to address, and this is why it's important to have the conversation about Article 11.
Sure. Member Bruno.
So I read this letter and I definitely have empathy on the placement, and it sounds like that placement has been decided by the ZBA, right or wrong, before us, but so the placement's not the issue. Your recommendation of denial is profound. I've only been on this commission a year, and this is the first denial that you've recommended that I'm aware of, so that holds a lot of weight with me. So I look at the why and I wonder, sounds like mobility is the issue, and it sounds like your issue is with size and it not matching the character of the home, because that's one of our, if you look at the procedure for
Mhm.
the architecture character of the accessory building in excess of 200 square feet shall be compatible and similar to the principal building. So I'm looking at all the reasons that you're recommending denial, and I wonder, has the applicant been willing to make those changes? I mean, you've gotten the location. Is there any reason we can't get the accessory building to match the architecture of the home? Is there any reason we can't make it a little smaller so you're not 1.5 times and still scratch the bulk of your itches?
If you want the applicant to speak, can I ask that they come up here so they can be heard
Yes.
for minutes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Let me reverse that. Just one.
Do you want the applicant?
I
Or not
do,
yet?
but I guess I want. Were they aware before they came that you denied? Was there a conversation with you about that?
There wasn't a conversation with me directly with the owners, but I have been in contact with the applicant, Troy Schruck, which he is the applicant and builder. So I have been in conversation with him throughout the process. And he is aware.
Okay. Thank
So,
you.
yeah.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes. Member Reese.
Is there something that could happen to the application that would change your recommendation? I mean, is there a certain size that you would target or a different placement? Is there something, and I'm not trying to put you on the spot, Madison, but is there something that would bring the staff, recommendation?
So it's a unique situation, right, where our review goes by the land, but we have an applicant who is an owner of a parcel who has a unique circumstance, which our criteria does not directly address. So my main concerns were that the average size that we have approved is being way exceeded. And I couldn't determine that was a good reason. There wasn't a good reason for the property to need that size accessory building.
What is the average size that we've approved in that area?
1,857 square feet.
Okay.
This is more than twice that.
But they could build 3 buildings
Correct.
by right.
So that's why I wanted to
have more
point that
square
out
footage
too,
than
to
that.
give you guys room to consider these things. Just my role is to look at the findings of fact and make my determination based on if they've met all of those. So that's why I also gave an option for, should you wish to approve it based on these circumstances that are exceptional, just not necessarily applying to the land, but the landowner.
So, and it's also 20% larger than the home itself. That's correct.
And that it's also larger than the home. That was my other concern.
The square footage for the home though, is that only the upper level? It doesn't include the lower level?
If so, we
That's a big
couldn't,
home.
right, that's what I'm saying. So the applicant could speak to it. I'm sure they'd be willing to make the architecture match the home. They've been very willing to meet our standards to get this building that they really just need for their family, is what they've indicated to us, that it would just help their family have a lot more access to space and time together.
Any other questions for Madison? Rob?
Well, I'm not sure that this is a question for you. Maybe it's just a general comment. There's a spot in here where it says 5 trees no smaller than 10 feet in height. I'm not exactly sure who made that determination, but there are
The ZBA did.
obviously many different types of trees, and you could find 5 trees that provide no screening that are 10 feet tall, depending on what type of tree you use. I find that to be a vague sentence, I guess, if we're actually trying to create screening.
The type of tree wasn't clarified at the meeting, so that's why I couldn't,
I understand.
I wanted to see evergreens, frankly, something that, provided that separation. At one point, we actually looked at putting a berm along that north side, but that really that just made the hillside even steeper. And so we decided to focus on putting the 5 trees out there. And I remember talking about evergreens. That's what I think we should have. Okay, I'd like to now ask the representative from Epic Homes. Mr. Schrock, are you here? Okay. Schrotenboers, come on up.
All right. Thank you very much.
hear you.
Hello again.
Hello again.
Thank you, guys. Really appreciate the discussion. Great questions.
Names and addresses.
Oh, yes,
please.
sorry. So Scott, Becky Scrotenmore, currently live on Turnberry Drive here in Cascade.
Down the street from me.
Right down the street, right around the corner from Mr. Moxley. Absolutely. So, but great discussion. Appreciate all the questions. And I think a lot of the things that you guys are addressing, first of all, to your question about the trees, evergreens is the plan. So
Good answer.
lost my mic.
Also,
Oh, there we go.
So,
Okay.
Questions for us?
Yeah. Remember Bruno?
I guess I kind of have one in the context of your already Cascadians. You live right down the road from him. One of the ZBA typical statutes is that your conundrum can't be self-inflicted. You pick this parcel, you pick the location of the home and now the barn is too close to the property line, the grade. Can you comment on, you know, a lot of empathy, but I see it as quite self-inflicted. Like you could have gotten a piece of property with a different layout. It might have taken you longer to find, but I have a hard time. If this was your current property and your current home and you needed to add something, but you started with a blank slate.
Sure. So it did take us quite a while. Scott fell 3 years ago, and our current situation now is we retrofitted our home the best we could, but it's hard. It's hard living for him. And so yes, we could have waited for a better piece of property, but every single day that he has to park outside and get out in his car in snow and the rain and all that, we found this piece and it was close to our kids' school, and we felt like this was the best piece of property that we could have. And the reason why we put the home and the accessory building on that part of the property is because it was the highest spot. And I know Madison was saying that it goes down a little bit. I don't know if you've been out to the property, but even just a little bit of a grade is a big deal for somebody who's in a wheelchair. So this, I understand you're saying it's self-inflicted, but it's, I don't really see it that way. I see it more as like, this is the best spot we could have been in on this land.
Kind of on top of a hill.
Yeah, but I guess the key phrase on this land. And so I get it. It's a catch-22. You need something soon, but
Right. And it's hard to find land around here. So I am also, for Epic Homes, the builder, I am the interior designer. So to speak to it's not a red barn. It just shows on the drawing. So I understand why you think it's red barn. And we would be willing to absolutely make it, it's the same exact color as our house, but it is made out of steel. If you feel like we need to do something different, we'd be totally willing to do that.
And can I also bring up a point too? In the packet, if you saw the very last few pages, they list the accessory buildings in Cascade Township. And I can't remember exactly how many were on there, but in that list, there's a lot, right? In that list, there were 7 buildings that were accessory buildings that are larger than this. And if you average the 7 buildings out, 40% larger than what we're asking for, on half of the acreage that we have, average of half of the acreage that we have. So, and I understand, I completely understand where you guys are coming from asking the questions, to Mr. Reese, to his point. 3 accessory buildings can be 832 square feet. So you add those together, very similar size. The reason, like personally, and I'm just gonna explain why I would like the building. In my past life, I was very active and I am not anymore. And this would give me the freedom to be able to go play basketball. I'm a basketball player, so go play basketball again, be able to go out and do different things out there. And so, yes, it's absolute recreation. Obviously would not be used for business. But that's why I'm asking. And to Becky's point, again, I just can't impress upon you the importance of low slopes, in where it's placed, where we have it drawn, would just be such a benefit for me. It'd be huge, to be able to go out there and be able to go use the barn. So.
Yeah, I asked what all is going to be stored in the barn.
I have a garden tractor, and I've got some other stuff. It's nothing obviously for business, but it's all personal use stuff. I want to put firewood in there. And also the intent would be to have a small basketball court in there for me and my kids, and potentially a pickleball court, something where I can get out there and be active. So.
Okay, other questions? Member Bruin?
would you, I get the logic, and I think you're the prime example of why there is such a thing as a special use permit. I always vote no on all of these because I think we use the rules incorrectly. You're the first one I empathize for because this is a special use. However, I'm a believer in precedent. I get the logic behind 3 times 832, so that's 2496. Could you limit it to that? Let's take 600 square feet out.
I didn't realize, it's weird to me as a residential designer that the lean-to is part of the square footage.
Yeah, we didn't realize that.
We didn't realize that.
I was gonna ask if you'd talked to your builder at all about the possibility of having that be an overhang. Because if
We
the
can totally do
posts
that.
weren't there and it was
Right.
cantilevered out, then it's
Mhm.
not part of the square footage.
Right. We could totally do that.
We can do that. I agree to.
And if you did that, you'd be much closer
Mhm.
to the number.
Right.
We'd be fine with that.
I would be willing to definitely do that.
Other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you.
Actually, I have one more. I guess I asked Madison, but so can you elaborate? So it sounds like there's one person or entity, I don't want to say person, who has, I didn't get any letters in the packet. Someone has had dissent, I guess. Can you elaborate on who that is and what that is?
Yeah, that was the neighbor to the north, and that was specifically because of the water runoff. We were concerned, or they were concerned about that. Understandable. That's what we worked through our last meeting with the zoning board.
And we talked to them afterwards
yeah,
and
we
they
did.
were great.
We had a great discussion with them afterward. We
That's been
spent time with
solved.
them here
Did the
afterward.
stormwater runoff, whatever study?
No,
Well,
no.
it's, yeah, no, the.
Oh, the
it's in the
stormwater
works.
runoff, yeah.
Yeah, it hasn't been totally approved yet, but we obviously wouldn't get the building
Yeah.
permit before we get that. But there's 2 engineers looking at it.
Member Reese?
Are you on a tight timeline for this?
Not necessarily.
Not necessarily. The hope was that we would be able to do it yet this winter. But also they need to be able to put posts in, et cetera. So, we can't have frozen ground. Right.
Now, can
I
I,
know I'm talking to somebody who knows, but yeah, and I'm sure you guys all know, but the hope was that we'd be able to do it yet this winter.
Okay.
But yeah.
can I float an idea here? Just a thought, maybe we could consider tabling this and the applicant could speak with their builder about changing the design of the building a little bit to get the square footage down. Or if there's, unless somebody else wants to make a crack at this, I'm just thinking different things. We have to have a public hearing first though, before we do
Yes,
anything.
that's true. I would be very, I want to vote yes, but I don't want to go too far out on a limb. So if you could get it close to that 2496, I think we've given you your location. Yes, I would second the motion to table after public input.
If
Let
one
you
was
guys
made.
sharpen the pencil a little bit and get a unanimous approval.
If we would agree to remove the lean-to and do an overhang.
I'm trying to find where that what footage would that get us to? So I'm taking off 8 by what?
8 by
40
64.
by 64.
Be 40 by 64.
40 by
So
64.
So you'd do a 25, 60.
65.
Any other questions for the applicant? Okay, thank you. I'd like to now hear a motion to go to public hearing.
So move.
Any support? Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we're now going to move to public hearing. Members of the audience are welcome to come up, give us your name, your address, and limit your comments to no more than 3 minutes. Would anybody like to come up?
Jack Holst, 3717 Cherry Lane, across the street.
Okay,
I just came here thinking, well, this is going to be a slam dunk and not worry about it and just listen in. But I just want to throw my support against approval of this. I think they've gone through quite a bit as far as planning, dealing with the water issue and so forth. And I know it's got to still be dealt with, but I think they've, you've approved that portion of the drainage issues and so forth. So just a special use permit. I know that's what this is about, but being a neighbor across the street, I guess I don't have an objection to having them build the building where it is designed to be and for what it's used for.
So you support it?
I support it.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to come up? Give us your name and address. Anybody online? Nobody online.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Support. Moved and supported. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Like to now hear from our planning commission members, your opinions.
I would say I generally am pretty open-minded to these special use requests with accessory buildings. I personally, I think I'm okay with this one, but I understand concerns that others may have. I'm a little bit more irked about the process, but that's not related to the applicant or what's in front of us. So, yeah.
May I make a motion?
Yes.
Well, I think Timmy has this hand up.
I'm looking at this and I'm not seeing a problem either. They're working with everybody, resolving issues, so I don't have an objection to it either.
Member Bruno?
I guess, I don't know where that leaves us, but I'll make a motion. I make a motion, we table this to see if they can change the lean-to be an overhang. And if they're willing to come back and get a unanimous approval with that new drawing.
With a new design. Okay. Do I hear a motion for support?
Support.
Rob supports. Any further discussion by members? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Member Nordhook is opposed.
And myself.
And, okay, member Reese, so it passes 4-2. Thank you. Thank you for coming in, Schrodenbors.
We'll be seeing you again.
Yeah. Don't give up on us. That house is really going to be very nice, I must say. It's beautiful. Just beautiful. Okay, next item, case 233800, Islamic Mosque, MO, yes, QUE, and Religious Institute.
Might not be able to see the site plan on the main screen. Okay, we have the Islamic Mosque and Religious Institute applying for a type 2 special use permit for a cemetery at 6670 52nd Street. This is in our ARC district. It's between the airport and Thornapple River Drive, and it's approximately 9.6 acres of vacant land. The applicant is requesting a recommendation for approval to the Township Board of Trustees for this type 2 special use permit to develop a cemetery with a total of 4,350 grave sites. The cemetery site plan indicates 3 phases with a clear boundary drawn between the first and second. The timeline was indicated as follows by the applicant that right now the most community members are being buried at the Graceland Cemetery. So the average is approximately 20 to 25 people per year. At that rate, it would take them approximately 75 years to fill phase one. It will depend on the size and demographics of the Muslim community that utilizes the cemetery as it changes over time. They have discussed possibly breaking it into smaller phases, and the applicant can get into further detail on that if you have specific questions. The proposed cemetery would be owned and operated by a not-for-profit religious organization, the Islamic Mosque. It's currently owned by Jada Ventures. The cemeteries are listed as permitted use via special use permit in the ARC district. So that is how we are treating the review. So we will be applying standards set out in section 17. The site plan does indicate that there will be no electric, water, or sewer on the property. Because no utilities are proposed, I did not require a lighting plan be submitted, but if the Planning Commission wants to consider lighting, you are welcome to add that requirement. Oh, I thought you had a question. This site would be accessed, as you can see on the site plan, with a circular drive with one main driveway access. This would require a curb cut from Kent County Road Commission. I did want to make a note that 52nd Street is a gravel road right now. So the Road Commission may have separate requirements for 52nd Street, but that would come obviously from the Road Commission. Currently proposed on the site are the grave sites, and then there's the ground mounted sign that is proposed. They haven't submitted any specifics of this sign. It would just be indicated to be in compliance with our standards. There is no new landscaping proposed, and there is a 10-foot buffer on the side property lines. We don't have a requirement in Chapter 17 for cemeteries to have a buffer yard, but I would urge the Planning Commission to take that into consideration after speaking with neighboring property owners. And we may want further information on what tree clearing is proposed, as we typically do require an inventory of existing trees for applications. I have consulted with legal counsel. I do have a copy of that original letter if you would like me to reference it, Ryan. The November 22nd memo that was referenced in the Foster Swift memo that you have in your packet was simply a memo stating that we review this application as a type 2 special use permit. So because I was already aware of that information, I didn't include it in your packet because it was in your staff report. So my apologies if you wanted both of those memos included. But rather the second memo that I did include did answer the question that I was looking to get more clarity on, which is what exemptions does the nonprofit organization have in building a cemetery. It also notes that our current ordinance addresses in our general ordinance cemeteries, but that is for township owned cemeteries. So there is no specific cemetery special use requirements in Chapter 17 as we have for other types of uses. So it's just treated as a general type 2 special use review requiring recommendation from Planning Commission to the Township Board. So in reference to the second memo, asking for if there are any additional requirements or exemptions for the applicant, it did conclude that long-term ownership of the cemetery should be clarified, which was clarified in the application that it would be both owned and operated by the Islamic Church, the Islamic Mosque. According to the township and the Cemetery Regulations Act 258 of 1968, legal counsel did determine that because they are a nonprofit corporation, that they would therefore be exempt from this act. So that is why we are treating this as a type 2 special use permit. And if you have further questions from legal counsel, I'm happy to request them. Moving on to number 10, in my staff report, the township engineer has also received the site plan and I have reviewed it. He does recommend approval. He also requires that we get a stormwater maintenance agreement and plan prior to construction. And additionally, that the soil erosion and sedimentation control permit will be required from the Kent County Road Commission. We have also submitted the site plan to the fire chief, who has reviewed the application and has stated no concerns. The applicant has indicated that a long-term maintenance plan will be required from the state when they apply. The document would be prepared at that time, they have indicated. So far we have done a staff review based on section 1706 and 1707. And those factors, there are 5 of them, and that be the first, that it be designed, constructed, operated, and maintained so to be harmonious and appropriate in appearance with the existing or intended character of the area in which it is proposed. This is operating in an agriculturally zoned parcel. The neighboring parcels are also zoned the same way, but are used as residential. Because there's no actual structures being proposed, besides a possible pergola, I didn't see that I had to evaluate anything to be harmonious other than the use itself. And because we have listed it as a special use in the ARC, I did not determine that it would not be harmonious. Second, the factor would be to consider if it's adequately served by essential facilities and services. It would be served based on the use, being off of Thornapple River Drive. And I did mention that 52nd Street is gravel, so we may need to discuss if the road commission would require any changes to 52nd Street surfacing for any reason because of this change in use. But my determination so far would be that the use would be adequately served, since we're not necessarily increasing density of the population or increase need for, if there is increased traffic, we're not creating a need for increased traffic necessarily outside of what would be adequate. The final 3 are that we're not creating an excessive requirement at the public's cost or for public facilities and services. I was not able to determine that that would be the case and did not determine that it would cause excessive additional requirements. It would not cause traffic congestion. I don't know if we would want to set a standard for processions and how traffic is directed on the nearby streets. Finally, the use should not involve activities, processes, materials, equipment, or conditions of operation that will be detrimental to any person's property or the general welfare by reason of noxious or offensive production of noise, smoke, fumes, glare, vibration, odor, or traffic. I did speak with our assessor and they pulled a record for me about how a cemetery use could impact property values of neighboring properties. It is determined that it's a use that's kind of based on who buys the neighboring property. So it wouldn't be outright negatively impacting a property value. I can provide that information to you guys if you're looking for it. And then, I mean, when we get further into this review, we may need to set standards for activities such as, funerals held for sound, and those sorts of we did get a letter asking about what would be permitted on grave sites and around grave sites, or how elaborate of decoration and that kind of thing. So this could come into play during this factor if we'd like to set standards that limit some activities that might be negatively impacting neighboring parcels. So this is our preliminary review. My recommendation is that we could pass this along to the township board. But there are other requirements that we do need to look into. And that would be to discuss with the applicant what is required from the state and what is required from the county, and what additional standards the township would like to set, if any. So I think this is an early review, a kind of a preliminary review, but you are able to make a recommendation this evening if you would like.
Any questions for Madison? Rob?
A few questions or comments, I guess, rather. In English, typically, as Mr. Moxley pointed out, we spelled mosque with an O, not like a French version of like a
Yes.
mask.
It should be an O.
And then second, my first question, I guess, is toward the top, it says under staff comments 2A, right now, most community members are being buried at the Graceland Cemetery on Cascade Road. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what that means exactly?
So that is a comment directly from the applicant. So I would prefer if they would speak to that, just because that's their knowledge.
Sure.
If that's okay.
Other members have questions?
I also would like to say or ask, I guess, you said that there was going to be nothing planned to be built on the property, but then you said maybe something was going to be.
So the site plan just indicates a possible future pergola.
Okay, I'm not
So-
super familiar with that word. What does that mean? Okay.
Small frame.
Yeah, like a pavilion with a roof and open sides. I'm
Okay.
assuming for events or, something
Sorry.
on the property.
Sorry for not understanding that. To me, one thing that I wonder about is if something were to be built there, typically, I'm not super familiar with architectural terms, but I do understand that common, I don't know what we would call it, Western civilization architecture. This usually Islamic architecture stands in stark contrast to that. And I think it wouldn't mix with anything in the neighboring vicinity. So just from an architectural or aesthetic standpoint, it seems like anything being built there in that style wouldn't match.
So the township doesn't necessarily review design styles. We don't have specific requirements outside of probably our village design standards, but that's kind of the extent of design review that the township would get into. But again, they're not proposing any built structures, so I don't know. I think we could cross that bridge when we got there, but at this time, we don't limit design.
Member Reese?
Okay, so I have a couple questions. First question is, what are the setbacks of our cemeteries at the existing, as well as the new addition that we did at 30th Street? I'm curious about that. I'm also curious if staff knows what the setbacks of the other cemeteries in the township are, Chapel Hill Memorial Gardens and St. Mary's at 52nd.
When you say setback, do you mean of buildings or any graves?
Any graves.
Okay.
I know
What was
it's
the
tough.
second one you mentioned?
Of Chapel Hill.
The other neighboring cemeteries that aren't township.
All right, St. Mary's is private, but what was
Right.
the other one you mentioned?
Chapel Hill Memorial Gardens, which is also private.
Those are
Is
only-
private,
Yeah.
correct. 30th Street is probably about 6 feet beyond the pathway. The fence is about, I think about 6 feet beyond the pathway.
Okay.
So it's beyond
Right.
whatever, that right of way issue and all that sort of thing. Whitneyville has a fence on its border and it is at least 10, maybe 15 feet off the road. I was just out there last week.
Okay.
Snow has also got a fence probably 10 feet off the road. 30th Street is most critical because the graves are not only close to the fence, but they're close to the driveways.
Gotcha.
So.
Okay. I did a little measuring. Unfortunately, the internet is not working. And and so I was unable to measure this real accurately, but using my phone, I think the other cemetery, the Chapel Hill Memorial Gardens, it looks like they have 30 feet between their, their setback. So
And I couldn't find any specific required setback for either Chapel Hill or St. Mary's. Those are the only other two private cemeteries that we have.
the communication from a resident, did they specify how much of a buffer they
They did not indicate what they would like to see.
understood?
Yes,
Well,
Nordhook.
I'm a little concerned about parking. I've been to cemeteries and people obviously go and visit grave sites. There's really no place to park. You just pull off to the side, but if more people pull off to the other side, you're not getting through. So I don't understand how we've got this designed to this point with no parking at all. And where do you put a tree in here? I'm just asking.
Member Bruno?
There's been a lot of reference to our existing cemeteries, and I think you made a reference to policies and procedures at those. So is there a document somewhere that characterizes what kind of flowers and how long they can be there? Like you mentioned all these things that we have to think through. Have we thought them through for our township cemeteries? There's a document that we could be provided that reflects all of those rules?
Yeah, there is. It's very clearly spelled out in our ordinance.
The general ordinance speaks to township owned cemeteries.
So what section? Sorry.
142 of our general ordinance. It's on the website as well.
Okay. Okay, I'll have to review that because I couldn't find that. So one.
It's under general ordinances, not the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
Go to general ordinances, number 142.
But what our ordinance allows is ornamentation, decoration within 1 foot of the gravestone. Flowers or plantings of, say, perennials must be within that 1 foot. Any kind of a wreath or shepherd's hook must be within 1 foot of that stone. And we'll take them out if they're beyond that. Our B&G staff is very good at that. Because they do all the mowing and weed whacking around there. So that is the limitation. We don't allow, there's a brochure on it separate from this ordinance, but we don't allow any hanging chimes. We don't allow any benches. The new portion, when it was built in, I believe, 2018, has a wider loop so that cars can park along the side of it. I don't know how many feet it is exactly, but it's wider than the current cemetery. Because you have to remember, the current cemetery on 30th Street was established in 1854. So a lot of trees have grown up. A lot of things have changed there. And so while looking down the road and setting aside that land, when they built that at 30th Street, they had to actually move the original cemetery. So when that one was built in, I think late 80s, no, it was before that. Since then, of course, the trees have grown up and all that sort of thing. So
I guess the reason I asked the question, if I gathered anything from that Foster Swift memo, was we need to be fair and equitable. So whatever rules we have for our cemeteries, it seems like we should have the same best practices, obviously not the rules from 18, whatever 100. But
Thank you.
Blast from the past. Yeah, member Engel.
Couple questions. Madison, are you satisfied that the engineer's report addresses the potential cooling water issue that Mr. Hilbrand brought up? Are we good on that from a township perspective?
That he addresses it in the report.
You know, so that's not a concern from the township's perspective.
Not to our engineer, no.
Secondly, my big concerns here with anything like this is coming from my background. Is the township comfortable with the state's determination that there are sufficient funds available to manage this in perpetuity? And is that something we've even had experience with as a township?
Sue, can you speak to that at all? Will you say the question one more time?
Sure. There's a reference in here to the state requiring a maintenance agreement, which I assume would be in perpetuity. Do we have any experience as a township as to whether what the state does with that is sufficient?
I'm only familiar with the ones that are owned by the municipality. And so in terms of private cemeteries, I've not dealt with that
It's new
document.
territory for us.
Okay. Maybe the applicant can address that. As
Yeah.
well. Do I also understand that they have agreed to put up a buffer on the east and west boundaries of the cemetery? Did you refer to that?
I don't know if they have agreed to doing that, but right now they list a 10-foot setback. But they haven't discussed
Okay, so
adding a buffer.
So the buffer was addressing a setback, not an actual physical boundary of some sort. I mean, a buffer of trees or whatever. There are a lot of trees to the west.
Right. Stated that we may want to consider a buffer yard just because it wasn't required. Because we don't have an outlined criteria for a cemetery. That was one typical requirement that I thought could apply well to this application.
Have we had any objection from the neighbor to the east?
I have not had any outright objection or support, just questions and curiosity.
Thank you.
Any other questions by, yes, member
A
Bruno?
couple. 4,000 grave sites on 9.6 acres. I'm trying to find that page. Is that
Is this a question for the applicant?
high density, low, as compared to what's currently in the township? Is this like packed in like sardines, or is this normal? And the reason I ask is because traffic studies, like if we know kind of what kind of traffic we have at say St. Mary's, would this be similar?
Site would be standard, right?
4 feet by 8 feet.
So I believe it's determined by the size of the grave site. But it looks like the applicant can speak to the
Yes.
question.
And then I guess the next one is you'd mentioned about dictating processions. Obviously, if the procession came from the south end of Thornapple River Drive, they would have a long queue to turn. to make a
Right.
left turn. Do we currently regulate any of our current cemeteries that they have to process in on the same side of the road? They have to be, all traffic have to go southbound, so they're not, because there's no turn lane there.
No, we
No.
don't determine processions currently.
So we do.
Parisi?
Before we invite the applicant up, can I ask just one quick thing?
Yeah.
Right, and not really ask, I just wanted to, I reached out to staff about other private cemeteries in the township, not township owned cemeteries, to see if we had any history there. And to see if we could kind of piggyback on maybe prior approval from the 50s for Chapel Hill, for instance, and there is not any, that is not a PUD. So it is not, there's not anything written in the record for that. It's actually non-conforming because it's zone B2. So there's not, there's a lot that we can use there to help guide us and try to be consistent. So I just wanted to put that out there.
Appreciate it. Okay, member Bruno?
One last one. I was hoping you'd get to it because it's awkward for me, but there was a letter of concern, I guess, from a gentleman, and you were going down the punch list about runoff, and then one of them was asking about vaults. Is that governed by the state, by the, like, is that addressed? Do we have an answer for him? Because I don't know the answer.
We don't have an answer. It would be the state or county unless the applicant knows something else.
There is something in our ordinance.
But that's for township owned cemeteries. That's the difficulty we have here is that our standards for cemeteries apply just to our property, not to private or other owned
So
cemeteries.
I'm not too concerned about what the answer is. I just want to make sure we get that gentleman an answer.
Yeah,
Okay, any other questions from Madison? All right, let's ask the owner representative to come up and speak to us. Please give us your name and if you live in the district, what your address is.
Ali Mitwalli, I am a Cascade resident. I live at 7444 Whispering Ridge Street.
What's your last name?
Mitwalli, Ali Mitwalli. Thank you for all the good questions that you have. And I just wanted to clarify. Cemeteries for Muslims are extremely simple. And actually, if you go and ask Graceland, which we have been using Graceland for the last 10 years, Graceland, when they design the burial lots, 1,000 burial lots per acre. Okay, 1,000 per acre. This one is 4,000 to 300 and some, because actually Graceland is not following our rules. The rules is you cannot step on the burial lots. Graceland, if you look at it, you walk on the burial lots. So the design here gives about 2 feet between the burial lots. So we have less burial lots per acre than you see any place else.
So, so what you're saying is basically, you're at 10 acres and doing 4,000. So you're
Yes.
roughly half the density of Graceland.
Right.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And I brought to Rosine the ideal Islamic cemetery, and I give it to him. So we are actually giving in regarding the acreage. We could have more there. Okay. To answer Rob's question regarding the structure, we're extremely simple. Okay, so if we're going to have any kind of a building, a building will be like any other building, but we are not going to. We are going to put,
Like a pavilion.
Pavilion. An
State
open
park,
area.
Just full built with a roof over top.
Yeah.
In cases of inclement weather.
Because in actuality, the burial is very fast. A person, when he dies, should be buried very soon during the day, before sunset. And all the process will take place because you are asked about parking. If you go to Graceland, there's no parking. All we park in the driveway. And here we have a huge driveway here. And for our burial, if we can get maybe 40 people to come in and bury the body, that will be sufficient. We don't have 1,000 people coming in to bury a body. And normally the process is very simple. Prayers takes maybe a couple of 3 minutes, 4 minutes, and then you bury the body and then everybody leaves. Okay? When people come in and visit, whoever, you just do it, stop by, do a short prayer, and just walk out. Okay?
Okay, Member Nordhook.
I just have a couple questions and please bear with me. I don't understand the process of the Muslim burial.
Yes.
So I have a few questions.
Yes.
So you say it's, when the person passes that it's a quick, in the ground quick, is there an embalming process?
No, I'm going to tell you, when the person dies, we rely on funeral home to come in and pick up the body from the home, from the nursing home, from hospitals. They take them to the funeral home. Funeral home, the body will be washed and covered with white wraps and put in a box and then take it to the cemetery. They pray on it and bury it.
Okay, so it's not really a casket, it's just a box. And then is it placed in a vault and then?
Yes, the place in a vault,
Okay,
okay? And the vault is a bottomless vault because the person have to be buried on the ground. So all the cement vault have a cover, but not bottom. Because we put the cement vault, and then the body will be put there on the ground, and then you cover with the cement cover, and then just put the soil on the top, and that will be the end of it. In terms of any kind of signs and all that is extremely simple. Actually, based on the belief system, you don't even put names. But people, if you go to Graceland, will put a cement with the name and the date of birth and the date of death. So it's a very simple process.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I think that does me pretty good.
Yeah.
As long as you're being that detailed, I think there's, so the box sits on the earth. How deep is that?
About 6 feet.
6 feet.
Yeah.
And then the vault, the lid of the vault, let's say the top of the lid of the vault is how deep below the earth? A foot? Like what?
Couple of feet.
Couple of feet.
Couple of feet.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Underground. Any other questions?
I'll ask a
Barisi?
question. How wide is the road on the proposed drawing?
He
Yeah.
basically can answer the question.
It's,
Yeah, you've got him up there, so I figured it was the right
it's a
time to
total
ask.
of 20 feet wide.
Okay,
Our thought was that we would have room to park a car,
and
we've
pass.
all been to funerals, everyone pulls off to the side. And then as you leave, you circle around and
And actually, if you go and see Graceland have roads only. There is no parking except for their business building. And we are not going to have a business building or anything. So there's enough parking spot for probably a good 500 to 1,000 cars.
well, we've been, as Dr. Nawali mentioned earlier, we've been quite careful in laying this out. He and I have gone back and forth for quite a while to make sure there's adequate extra space between the grave sites. You can see on the detail spot of the plan there. So people are able to walk amongst the grave sites without walking on them. We've also added 10-foot pathways, kind of bisecting the different parklands that we're calling them, that allow for additional foot traffic through the area.
There's an open space in the center there, I see, with no burial
Yes.
plots in it.
That's a drainage path.
Okay,
It's,
We designed it to have it as a beautiful site rather than a crowded ones. Okay?
okay, great.
Because there is a great deal of respect for the dead person.
Yeah.
So you try to treat them with kindness, let them stay in a place that have peace, okay, and mercy. And he really did a great job. He never designed a Muslim burial, and I have provided him with lots of information, and he came up with a beautiful plan. Okay.
Great. Great.
On title block C101, I don't know if that's a page number. You have a temp 12-foot wide drive. I get the big loop, but there's a temporary drive. What is that?
right, that's ultimately, the entire cemetery will have a major loop driveway. This is a temporary one, so this will go away once this other roadway is installed. This temporary one will go away in between.
Okay, so as you grow, so it's
Yeah.
originally it'll be 12 feet.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a big cemetery, and based on the number of community death, and we got that information from Graceland, it's about 20 to 25 for the whole community. So we are building that on stages. And as I said, I think it takes about 75 years for this complete cemetery to move forward. Okay? And it's all depending on on the size of the community down the road. So.
Great. Any other questions?
Two last two. So the 20-foot wide road and then you have the 10-foot, that's just like a setback, or is that like a pull-off shoulder, or what's the?
Yeah, that's just basically for pulling off, so cars can pull off, the road and not be on grave site. So that's just an extra buffer space. Out of respect for the grave sites.
Exactly. Okay.
Parking on them.
And then my final question, I'd be amiss not to, it's right next to the airport. So the airport has reviewed this pond and there's no concern over geese or there's flowers. The airport's okayed this?
Yes.
It's if I may, it's a drain dry basin. It's not a retention basin, it's
Yeah.
detention. So
Detention, okay.
very dry.
You concerned about planting flowers?
I have no concerns. The airport has some very unique concerns about what's adjacent to it.
Yeah.
They're concerned about birds going into
Attracting
engines and
birds.
Oh.
stuff like that. So I just,
I thought about flowers when you mentioned flower company.
yeah, I don't exactly know all their concerns. I leave that to them. I just want to make sure that they've,
It's a specific concern of the.
yes.
Yes.
You mentioned it's a detention. Are the soils out there applicable for that?
For detention, the soils are irrelevant because it has a positive outcome.
Okay.
So it'll drain dry regardless of what.
Where will it drain to?
See, there's a natural ravine.
Yes, there is.
It had in it.
Yeah.
It goes in here and there's a.
No,
culvert.
okay.
That's
thank
the
you.
lower area of the site. So
Sure.
it's-
He did soil pouring all over, so we know the level because, you try to bury the body and you don't want the water to come close at all.
We did a significant amount of
Yes.
soils
Testing.
investigations
Oh, yeah.
beforehand with the soils instructors, and I personally was out with Jason Buck of the Health Department. After that, once we had those soil borings, we went out and took more with Jason to make sure he was comfortable with it.
Good.
We do have an approval letter from him.
And we didn't touch any of the land that have a little bit higher water level. And you can see there is quite a bit back there.
Member Nordhook?
Where are you gonna put snow? Gonna plow the road,
Just off into the 10-foot space on the sides.
the walkway.
Yeah.
No,
There may be.
it's a great question, and maybe I should ask Graceland because we go there. I go there. My wife is buried there, and the snow is all over the place. You have to walk through that, so there is no space for the snow. Okay. You just leave it to melt, and right?
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm just finding one last, so obviously 52nd isn't paved there, but you've got a paved loop.
That's not paved, that's gravel, I'm sorry.
Oh, yours is
Yeah.
gravel?
Mhm. Yeah, because, and we still have to go to the road commission for the entrance on that. It's a gravel road, so typically they only require a gravel driveway on that type of thing. And it's our intent to help, the cost of the development of the cemetery as far as wells runoff to do a gravel driveway. Because it's not gonna be used a whole lot, if pavement doesn't get used a lot, it gets stuff from up.
Keep
through
it simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Member Nordhook? Any-
I'll bring it up in a little bit.
Okay, any other comments?
Not for the applicant at this time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank
Go
you.
blue.
Thank you very much.
Wait, it's been a good weekend for that.
Hold on.
Wait, my son's at
Is
Bama.
that
I
a
have to stay
disclosed
roll tide or
conflict?
I'll be admiss.
Okay, I'd like to now open it for a public hearing. Can I have a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Can I have support?
Support.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. We're now open for public hearing. You're welcome to come up, give us your name, your address, and tell us what your concerns may be.
Hello, I'm Marty Hilbrands. I am part owner of the property right next door at 6482 52nd Street. My brother Dan and Rebecca live on the property. My father owns it with us, so the three of us own it.
You wouldn't happen to be related to a Brian Hilbrands, would you?
It depends whether you like him or not.
We do.
Yeah,
We like him a lot.
I tried to get him to come to this meeting. He could do this a lot better than I could, but he didn't want to do that.
Well, you're disappointed he took the job at the airport.
I know. So,
And he's welcome to come back if he wants to.
I will let him know.
Oh, thank
I
you.
will let him know.
Since our internet is down, I'd normally Google where you're at. So you're the property to the west.
Yes, we are right to the west. We own 80 acres to the west. And so a big parcel there. We've been there for 25 years. There's an old farmhouse. Deanna and Rebecca live there with their girls. And then we just kind of goof around and deer hunt and cut firewood and kind of keep the property as potential investment property.
I actually drove down there to that property.
Okay.
At one point. That's
Okay.
probably about a year ago.
I drove down there today and your two dogs are doing a great job defending the property. I backed out.
Yeah. It's a little bit informal, but can I ask Ali a couple of questions a minute? Just real simple
You
ones?
should direct the questions to us.
Direct the questions to us.
Okay.
We really come to us. We'll call Ally back up in a minute.
Okay, so my two questions for him were, one, if we were to go to Graceland and look at the existing Islamic sites there, would they look like you're picturing the new cemetery? And so that's one question. And then the second question would be, if the burials happen so quickly, there's not like a maintenance building here for equipment. Will there be equipment on site, or is that going to come in from the outside? How does that process all happen quickly? So those are my two questions for him.
Just a second. Go ahead.
So then you've got my other comments. I wrote a few things down, and this has been kind of an interesting one. I mean, we were here a year or so ago talking about commercial buildings in this site, and now we're talking about something totally different. And so it's kind of hard to get my head around this. And on the one hand, I feel okay about it because it's like I kind of enjoy cemeteries. My wife and I walk through old historic cemeteries, and they can be beautiful places. And so on the one hand, it's like I feel pretty good about that. I'm also a big proponent of communities of faith. I've been part of a community my entire life, and I'm very involved in my current community. And so I'm empathetic towards some of their, unique concerns and interests. But I also understand that there's lots of different peoples and communities of faith that might have different opinions on how things go. And so it's important to me that things get written down in terms of how this cemetery might progress, or what the guidelines might be, or what the requirements might be, because 20 years from now, someone else might be on the committee at the church or at the mosque, and they might have different opinions about what can and can't be done. And so I'm just really concerned about the aesthetics of the place. That's sort of my point number 6 on my list. And I showed some pictures and some images on my letter that I wrote to you, and that there's certain images that I feel really good about. I love the trees. I love the green space. I love the peace and the serenity, the simplicity of it. That's cool with me. But there's other pictures of cemeteries that it's like, I don't want that. And I don't think you guys want that in our township. And I just don't know how to manage that. I appreciate the comments about how in the general requirements, there are some restrictions on what can be done in cemeteries. I looked in the zoning ordinance and I didn't find anything there. So I appreciate that there's something written down, but that's my biggest concern is what's this going to look like? And anyways.
Okay. Thank you.
And
Any questions for
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Hillmans?
Again, going back to that Foster Swift memo, so equitable. So we have rules and regulations on our Cascade owned cemeteries. When you go buy a Cascade cemetery, is that in line with your expectations? If we use that as the template.
I'd have to go look. I haven't been by one of those lists. That's dangerous. So
Based on.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Sorry.
Mr. Metallic, would you like to address those two questions?
Vice Chair, if I maybe we should finish the public comment, because I have a feeling there's gonna be several more questions, and I don't want to get into a back and forth because it's just gonna draw the meeting out.
Okay. Other comments? Name and address, please.
Hello, my name is E.S. Alberuti, 1900 Tall Pines Drive. So I'm also a member of the mosque, and just wanted to respond to the gentleman's question, at least one of them. I think they're very fair questions, and this idea, this concept of a Muslim cemetery kind of has existed some years back, and it was only recently that we sort of identified this property as a potential. And I think a lot has happened since then, where we've really gotten into the nitty gritty of, okay, what is this process going to look like? We have a lot of questions that we've had to face, probably not dissimilar to the questions that the public might have or the commission might have. So I think, this has been a learning process for us as well. But one thing I can tell you from, my discussions with the leadership of the mosque is that we are absolutely committed to making sure that this is a place that the community, not just the Muslim community, but all the community regards as a neighborly, friendly place that is not going to turn anybody off in any way. I think some of the facts that Dr. Ali shared are helpful to keep in mind. One question in particular was about, in the future, how might the place look, and, especially, with successive generations. Great question. One thing that's important to keep in mind is the practices, the rituals that govern kind of how burials are performed, the ones that were shared by Dr. Ali. I can't emphasize enough that they are very simple. And one really key factor is that, as part of our faith, we do follow a particular law, kind of Islamic law, in terms of how things are done. So when we're doing these practices, we're really following Islamic law. And that doesn't change. That's one thing about our religion, is that we really maintain those laws throughout the centuries. So I would say that as, whatever practices we would do now, if the community and the commission, comes to the appreciation or realization that they're totally benign and not off-putting to the surrounding community, that really should not change in the future. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Member Bruno?
Naive question. So the namesake mosque, where is your mosque?
It is on East Paris. 3357. Oh, and the other quick comment about the architecture. Although our mosque, and there's a neighboring mosque too, does have sort of like a Islamic architecture motif, I can't envision that being the case at this, even if in the future some sort of small building or something. I don't foresee any type of particular architecture. It would just be a more functional building.
Other questions? Okay, anybody else like to step forward? Name and address, please.
Rebecca Hilbrand, 6482 52nd Street, the property to the east, west, sorry. I'm just confused because we live at the end, and when I drive down 52nd to my home, it's aesthetically pleasing. And I'm trying to figure out how a cemetery stays with the aesthetics of that community all around. And even the houses that border on Thornapple River. Yeah. So that was just my question. And I'm just not sure how a cemetery will do that. And then when you go to our house, some homes have more than one exit that they can choose to leave their home with. We have one. And every day I will have to drive by to leave and to come home past the cemetery, not the trees that were once there. And I don't even know if this is a valid point of what I'm supposed to say. I've never been to one of these meetings. It's been very entertaining, I have to say, to sit and watch.
It's our goal is to be entertaining.
And so I just wanted to voice my concern. It's not necessarily what religion has a cemetery there. It's a cemetery. And that's what I would have to drive by every day and there and back. So that's just I don't even know if it's a question, but I wanted to be heard. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else like to step forward? Name and address, please.
Yeah, I am Dan Hilbrand, Rebecca's wife, so also live at 6482 52nd.
Okay.
And yeah, I just kind of want to go along with her, just the aesthetics. Everyone who comes to our house just comments how beautiful it is, when they come down and they come through. And I'm sorry, but a cemetery is not beautiful regardless of what you do to it, with grave sites and, different things there. And I just don't feel that it fits our community. And another thing that I am really concerned about, we want to be respectful of all religions and sensitive to their needs. So if we allow an Islamic cemetery, what about other religions that all of a sudden are going to want to, hey, we want to put our own cemetery in Cascade Township. And also we start getting cemeteries popping up in different locations. So, I just want that to be kind of a concern also. And also, like my wife said, we have a dead end. And like today, there was only one car that drove down. But the thing is, there's no turnaround. So they have to turn around in our driveway, or they have to turn around, into our pole barn driveway. We've had problems with trucks coming down and, they get in there and they get jackknifed and all of a sudden I can't get out. So, with that and just increased traffic, and there's another concern is safety, safety for my kids. There is going to be extra traffic that's going to be coming down. And right now, we are extremely secluded. So, that's just been really some of my concerns, with this going in.
Let me ask you a question. How far west of this proposed entrance is your house roughly? Another quarter mile?
600 feet. Is it 600 feet? Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So if there was some sort of signage at the entrance to the cemetery saying, turn here to go to the cemetery, that'd prevent people from continuing on.
Yeah. But the thing is, people still do, not everybody listens to that.
Yeah.
So
that's assuming they have good eyesight.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Hilbrand? And are you the uncle of Brian Hilbrand?
I am. Yep.
Oh, that's,
Yep.
That's
one
great.
of the uncles.
That's great.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. You bet.
Name and address, please.
Janice Hilbrands, but I'm live on 3839 Cook Valley Boulevard in Grand Rapids. We are also the owners. I'm Will Hilbrand's wife. We are the owners also with the sons for that property. Along the line with aesthetics and driving down that road, that is just it's always been a nice, quiet country road. And to see that changed, I hate to see it changed to a different type of permit that can be done. Right. There's 2 homes on that road. The first home is very close to that property, and at 600 feet, we're just down the road. I'm wondering what kind of screening will be done for that. What type of buildings? I'm not aware of how big the sign can be for that cemetery. over 4,000 graves seems like an awful lot of graves in a cemetery, in a site like that. So I am against also seeing this change, to see the whole concept of this. And you talk about the value of property. I can imagine how the value of our property, 80 acres, would go down when you have when the buyer would have to ride past a cemetery every day to go to their place. Guess that's what I was that's it.
Okay, any questions? Thank you. Come on up. Name and address, please.
My name is Hikmat Piramari. I live in 6240 Glenstone Drive, and I have multiple business in Cascade too. I totally support this cemetery in this location. And just to answer this brother and this family, I know the board, they are all doctors, and specifically they are very strict to be nice to neighborhood. I don't think these people will do anything community do not like them. And I can admit that one and support 100% with the American flag and God.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Anybody else like to step forward? Name and address?
Mohammed Salah, 5514 Alhambra Drive. Just want to our future neighbors, if this project goes through, is the Islamic teaching is we have to take care of our seventh neighbor down the road in each side. So we'll make sure 100%. Actually, I'm the head of the board at the mosque, and we will make sure 100% that we'll take care of our neighbors. And I'm physician by training, so actually a lot of the committee members are my patients. So actually, it's my job to keep them alive, so they will not use this. But just to give you an average, right now, like Dr. Mitwali said, it's 1 to 2 a month. So really, the traffic that we're talking about would be 1 every 2 weeks maximum, maybe once a month. More like real average is about less than 20 a year. So really, I don't expect any major traffic. And like Dr. Mitwali said, our average attendance to any funeral will be about 25 to 30 cars maximum. So really, I don't think that will be bothering our neighbors. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you, Doug.
thank you. Anybody else? Step forward.
Hello, it's me again, David Bolt, 6855 Thornview. Mine is more kind of a question to the applicants regarding the design. I guess knowing what the phases would be on the topography might be helpful. I'm specifically thinking about the open type of land, and then there's a certain treed topography. So I don't know if that's explicitly stated on the design, but understanding kind of the phases and what trees might be cut down at what point would be helpful to know. And then also the design of the plots are on a 45 degree. I assume that has something to do with Islam and prayer, but it'd be also helpful to know kind of how the design meets with the religion for the site. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on up. Name and address.
Tom Stouches Dyke, 5545 Thornapple River Drive. I understand your internet is not working. Is that what you said earlier?
Yes, that's correct.
So the neighbor to the east, Max Smith,
Yes.
all he would like is a buffer. A row of trees. Like the Hillbrand said, it is a quiet, scenic area. He's not really opposed to it to a degree, but he would like a buffer that he doesn't have to see the cemetery.
A buffer of deciduous trees, evergreen trees.
Conifers.
I believe Mr. Smith is attending virtually and would like to speak, is what he indicated to me this afternoon, but Maddie can verify as well.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll get his comments in a minute.
So that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else in the audience? Anybody online?
Yeah, Max Smith is online. I'll allow him to speak now, so.
Okay, welcome.
He'll be muted, maybe?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
All right, my name is Max Smith. I live on 52nd Street. My property to the west of me, my property line west of me is attached to the property in question for the cemetery. I purchased my property in 1968. I built the house in 1969, and so I've lived there going on 55 years. When I bought the property and when I moved there, I knew it was agricultural. I expected to see cows and pigs and everything else there, but I didn't, and even buffaloes now that we have there. But I certainly would have never bought the property if someone would have said, you're going to have 4,000 people buried next to you, regardless of what kind of a cemetery it was, whether religious it was or not. So even though I did tell Tom, my neighbor, that if it absolutely has to go through, then I would like to see a significant buffer with trees or whatever. I would prefer that there was no cemetery there. As Becky and other ones have said, it's a beautiful area, and this would just totally change the nature of the property. And so I am strongly against having that cemetery there just because it's totally unrelated to what I thought I was buying when I bought my property 69 years ago. But at this particular point, if it has to go, which I don't want it to, but if it has to go, there has to be a buffer, and it's going to kind of spoil the neighborhood. And I think the value of my property, regardless of what some people may say, the value of my property is going to go down because I would not buy property that has 4,000 people or potentially 4,000 people buried right next to me. And I'm the closest. The Hillebrandt lives on the west side of the property. I live on the east side, and my home is closer even to the property than theirs. So that's my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else from the audience? Okay, can we have a motion?
Motion to close public hearing.
Support. I'm gonna call this hearing.
Yeah, we can do that out of the hearing. He's the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Okay.
Vote on that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Public hearing is closed. Mr. Matali, would you like to address some of the questions that came up, or
If I may.
your landscape
I'll address as many
engineer?
as I can. Yeah. Thank you. One of the earlier comments was, how is it going to be maintained? Are any permanent structures on the site? Originally, when I did the soil borings with Jason Buck from the health department, Kenny Wittenbach was the dug the holes for us. He's also a 4th or 5th generation grave digger, and he will likely be the person that does the graves here. With the 20 to 25 people a year, it doesn't really warrant having any on-site maintenance, struck buildings or anything like that. He moves in with his equipment the night before, digs a hole, puts the cloth around it, and then just backfills it and leaves. So his equipment comes to the site, does the digging beforehand, and then once the family and mourners have left, he backfills the grave site.
It's on site on a temporary
Yeah,
nature, not
yeah.
a permanent nature.
With the volume of burials that are anticipated for this site, it just, he'll move in when he needs it. So, yeah.
Okay.
So it'll be that. The aesthetics, we would be willing to abide by the same rules that are in the municipal cemetery. 1 foot around the gravestone for any flowers or.
I would like to see those restrictions written into an agreement so that it is consistent with we don't actually have control over a private cemetery. And as Madison says, they're exempt from some of the rules, but I would like to see that same restriction written into an agreement so that it is consistent.
And it would be our preference that be a contingency if you decide to approve this tonight, that we provide that and it's consistent, and staff, decides whether it's consistent or not with the existing rules. So, yeah. So aesthetically, most of the grave markers will be just flat stones on the ground. Some may be, you've seen them, the kind of the shorter rays that are just kind of an angle that are up, so they're above the sod, so they're not, that's a typical grave marker for these grave sites. So I'm just trying to talk about aesthetics a little bit, and that's kind of what we'll see are the shorter gravestones or just a flush gravestone. And the applicants would be willing to expand the green space, the buffer around the site. They have 10 feet. We could go to 20 feet, double that, and do a buffer planting. You know, we have a fair amount of existing trees, but as the phase develops, we would do the buffers, you know, where there aren't trees to the adjacent properties. To the west, there's a fair amount of existing tree line along the western property line. Any point where we don't have that, we'll augment that with additional plantings. Same as on the east side. We'll expand that 20 feet and do some landscape.
How about the north side facing 52nd Street? What kind of buffer?
We could do that there as well.
That
We
would help.
can't totally screen it so they won't see a cemetery. There will be a cemetery, but you know, we will do some evergreen plantings and, you know, try to break it up as much as we can
Okay.
within that 20-foot green space. So that, if you're so inclined, we'd be willing to make that a condition of approval.
Right.
And I believe that was about it, unless you have other questions.
Question from member
I have a
Bruno.
couple being sensitive to the neighbors. One, I just thought of what you're talking about, you know, he comes in the night before and, you know,
Mhm.
digs the grave.
Mhm.
Is there a window, like, would they be out there at 1 o'clock in the morning, waking these people up, digging a grave? Like, is there standard operating procedure, a time that we would allow grave diggers to operate?
Well, it just has to follow our normal
Township
noise
rules.
ordinance.
Which they've agreed to.
Yeah.
The noise ordinance, but I mean, yeah, I don't know what to say. I don't know any grave diggers that'll wanna be out there at 3 o'clock in the morning
In the dark.
digging a grave, but.
Can I speak to that?
Sure.
Ours are done by our B and G crew, and we require 24 to 48 hours notice. And it has obviously to be done during working hours.
Okay. That's an acceptable limitation.
The 48 hours may not work though, in terms of the practices. So I mean, that's more
true.
Township
Yeah.
imposed restriction for our staff than it really is practical, I would think.
Right.
So if we waive that 24 to 48, we just said they must be dug during business hours, that's acceptable.
By Islamic rules, we have to bury within 24 hours. So as long as that's acceptable, but obviously will not be operating.
How are you going, who is going to dig the graves?
Penny Wittenbach is someone we've talked to. We
Oh,
don't
so you
know-
have a private,
Yeah, he's
contractor.
not under contract by any means, but we've talked to him and he's very interested in servicing this.
so he can do it, work with that time frame.
Yeah,
Perfect.
and he has some other excavators that, you know, sometimes he can't be it. You never know. So sometimes he can't, you'll have 2 or 3 different.
Well, they don't want to work all night either.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Debating.
Well, Dr. Metwally asked that I address the sign,
At the entrance.
the entrance sign. Yeah, and it'll meet the zoning requirements. We'll submit. Or you have a separate approval process and ordinance for the sign, so we'll submit that to the township for approval.
Okay. Question, member Norduck.
I think that went a long way by agreeing to go by our township cemetery rules for decorating the graves. And then the screening on the side, you know, the extra screening,
The buffers.
the buffers, that went a long way with it.
Yeah, it's good to hear.
And
Member Bruno.
Kind of, I'm thinking through the whole maintenance, you brought up plowing and then I thought of the grave digging. What about at maximum capacity, you'll have 10 acres. Is this mowed? Like, will someone be out there for 8 straight hours mowing constantly or what is the grounds maintenance?
It'll be no different than any other cemetery.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be maintained as lawn and.
Okay, member Reese.
Driving down there, I understand and sympathize with some of the neighbors regarding the road and the way it just kind of ends at their home. has there been any, I'm wondering about, it's a gravel road. It's not I shouldn't say it's not an improved road because it's improved, but I think you know what I'm trying to
Yes,
say.
absolutely.
It's very basic.
Yes, yeah.
Is there any thought to having more of a cul-de-sac there between this property and the neighbors? I don't know if that's maybe an extra far reach,
That's,
but
that's a good question. The road commission, as part of their review of the commercial driveway entrance plan that we'll have to submit, they send it through their traffic safety department, the right of way department, all those departments, and they'll chime in on any of those concerns. But yeah. Many times, providing a proper cul-de-sac becomes a right of way issue because they're typically beyond the
sure.
60.
No,
yeah.
But I hear you there.
The road commission certainly runs it through all their departments before they approve the entrance. So.
That's a very valid concern, because I drove
Yeah,
down there
absolutely.
one time and I had to pull into the Hillbrand's driveway in order to.
This will give one more place for people to turn around and
That's
head back out.
Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of awkward back there.
Mhm.
Okay, any
And
other questions?
Really, frankly, there's no amount of signs you can put up that'll make people not go down. I mean, is there a sign up there now that says dead end at the end?
No outlet sign.
At the entrance? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. There's, yeah.
Yeah, I was out
on
there today. I
this-
took a picture. It says it's a diagonal sign says no outlet, and then I guess to reiterate that a second time, it says no turnaround.
Yeah. And people still go down there.
So don't be surprised when you get there.
Right, yeah.
Okay, number Reese?
So and maybe you covered this, but when I look at this plan that's sitting there beside you, there throughout the middle of the cemetery, there are no trees that I see on the plan. Are there trees scattered out there, or is it just open?
Existing right now, it's.
No, not existing. As you guys envision it built, are you going to have some trees throughout there planted in various spots, or are you envisioning it just being open lawn? And, okay. Yep, okay. That's my only question to the applicant right now.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any further discussion by board members, or would anybody
Yes.
like to propose something?
I think it is important for our planning commission to think this through, because obviously we don't have any standard to look back on other than our own cemeteries, which are very dated. And I want to make sure that we're not setting any kind of precedence moving forward. I wrote down some notes, and most of what he came up with aligns with what I was thinking about. So I think if we can tie in rules that are accepted by the township, similar to what we have, where it makes sense. And I'm not as worried about the equipment or the contractor working outside of business hours. I don't think that would be an issue. We have a noise ordinance that I think would kick in if somebody was working out there late at night or early in the morning. It would prevent that. So I don't know that we need to go down that road. As far as setbacks go, again, we don't have, our internet isn't working tonight, but I think, I was going to go for 30 feet setback, 20 feet, I think is reasonable. I could live with that. So, and I questioned the building issue, but I think we've got that resolved. There isn't one. So, I could see something with a greater setback and, aligning with the rules. I could see something working here.
I like the 30-foot setback along 52nd Street and the 20-foot on the east and west sides.
Say that again. You like the what? 20-foot east and west and 30 on the north.
Yeah. 20 on the east, 20 on the west, 30-foot setback on the 52nd Street side, the north side.
think they're actually,
It's currently showing 10, but
I don't know how far they are. I can't tell. I don't have my glasses on.
There'd be no objection.
for the sake of discussion, like my first inclination was, wow, 4,350 grave sites, that's a lot. But when you really think about it, it's only 365 days a year. So when this thing is completely full in 75 years, there's only 12 anniversaries each day. That's not much traffic.
It won't be full in 75 years.
Okay, so less than that. I mean,
More.
no, more years mean there's less traffic.
Exactly.
12 anniversaries, if,
Exactly.
2 kids go out there or the spouse and kids, I mean, 24 cars on a given day is not.
When was the last time cemetery rules and regulations have been updated? Has there been a committee? Has there been anything that?
It's a great question. I don't have the answer right
I think Jimmy just volunteered to chair that committee.
Well, if there's an ordinance that have a publication day, right?
Right, I was just gonna say, I think it was 1996, but I could double check. Possibly.
I do think that private cemetery should be governed by those as well. The township rules.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah, looks like it was amended in 1996.
Sounds about right.
Do we have township ordinances that specify that signage be in English only? Not Arabic? Thank you.
Okay, does anybody want to propose anything?
Well, unfortunately, I need my computer to do that. Hang on a minute. So let me catch up.
So while he's gathering his thoughts, I want to go back to what he said. He says, to think this through. We oftentimes send it up and we have this long list of conditionals. Would there be any harm in basically tabling this? So we've agreed to a lot of stuff. Have them come back with that documentation, with the blueprints updated, and then move it up?
I thought about that, but this is gonna go to the township board. So if they don't have their ducks in a row when they go to the township board, then it's not gonna go anywhere, or it'll get sent back down to us if the township board doesn't like what they proposed at that time.
It's true. I don't know, trying to set them up for success, that we would check their work before we send it up. But if you wanted to send it up, it was just a thought.
Well, we have a board member, we have a couple board members here. What is your thought on that? I mean, if we tell them they've got to come up with rules that are, similar or consistent to our cemetery's rules,
My suggestion would be that you rewrite it with the changes that we've talked about tonight, that you've talked about tonight. If you want a greater approval at the board level, I would fix it here.
Okay.
Before you go up to the board.
Thank you, Sue. Timmy, would you concur with that, or do you have a different opinion?
Yeah, I think we've covered quite a bit of ground here. We're in agreement on a lot of issues, so.
But
We're
get it
close.
all dotted, I's dotted, T's crossed, and tied up in a bow to present to the board?
Yes,
Or
we like the bow.
You like a
Yes,
bow?
Especially.
I think that would lead to better success for you guys personally.
Okay.
I think.
So update the
Give it to the
engineering
board really
drawings.
clean and neat and proper.
I can take that.
Yes, come on up.
So
Thank you for your comments, and all of you. If we could, if that's the direction we're headed, I would like to, I know you moved the table, but I would like to a clear laundry list.
Well, that's
of-
what I was just about to
Yeah.
do.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank you.
That's
Yeah,
coming.
thank you.
That comes with a table usually.
Don't worry about that.
Okay, member
Okay,
Reese.
so I want to make sure before I make a motion, I just want to talk about this a minute and make sure that we have all the right bullet points on this thing. Okay, so we have and I guess that since we're tabling, I don't need to worry about the staff recommendations because in the staff report, they're already aware of that. And that would be contingent upon any approval that we make. So they'll need to deal with those items. But as far as items that we want to see, when they come back in front of us. I think we want to see a site plan that includes Chair Moxley threw out a recommendation of 30 feet along the street for setback and 20 on the east and west lot lines. And then I think we want to see some trees in that setback. If there aren't currently trees, we'd like to see some landscape trees planted in the setback, not in the active site. And then, or not necessarily in the active site, and just asking for them in the setback. And then rules as far as the decorations and accessories within the cemetery. We need to see some rules, and we'd like them to be similar or consistent with the rules that we have in place at our cemeteries.
For public cemeteries.
Right, which is in our general ordinances, section 142, if you want to look.
We
at that
also have a
online.
handy little brochure.
Oh, look at that. Probably even has colored pictures.
Yes.
So does anybody have anything else that they think we need to put in this list? Yes.
There's been concern over the sign. Can you give us a representation of what you think the sign would look like and its size? You said it's going to match, but can you give us a rendering? What's that? A rendering, a drawing. This is the sign.
This is the size of the sign.
Well, we have a sign ordinance that would regulate. Yeah, that would be regulated in our ordinance.
Whatever's allowed by the ordinance.
Right.
Okay, you're good with that.
This is not a PUD, so we don't get to make changes to that. Really. Yeah.
It would be in English.
And by the way, the sign will be in English.
I figured as much since we're all speaking English.
Thank you.
That's
Any
good.
other-
Then I'll be able to read it, so I'm in favor of that.
Any other comments to add to what he's already outlined?
Okay, then I would make a motion to table this application, case number 23-3800.
So actually one.
Oh,
I'm just trying to replay back. Could we also ask for a opinion of the county for that roundabout you've suggested? Rather than just let it go through the proper channels, can they actually raise that with the county? Would we be allowed, is there room here for a turnaround?
okay, I think I can work something in here. Okay. Motion to table pending further information in case 23-3800. Looking for a plan that shows 30-foot setback along the road, 20-foot setbacks on the east and west sides of the development with trees or other landscaping inside those setback areas. And we're looking for rules that are similar or consistent to our township ordinance on cemeteries related to accessories and decorations at the grave sites, as well as your maybe road commission approval for your access and a opinion from them on whether or not a cul-de-sac could be worked into that. And if so, then it probably, I'm assuming you're going to need a wider easement than what's there. So maybe a neighbor, if they want to see a cul-de-sac there, would have to contribute to make that happen.
We couldn't solve standard cul-de-sac.
Right. So just little information seeking is, I think, what we're looking for there. And then in compliance with our staff recommendations in today's report. That would be my motion, if that's not too much.
Support. Oops, oh, wait, which one? Member Engel supported it. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes 6-0. Thank you. Good job.
So question on procedure, does it come back to the planning commission on, or is the next meeting after?
Oh, it'll
Comes back here.
come back here
Probably next week.
with this information we requested, and then we'll review it, and then we make a determination as to if it goes to township board or not.
Did we get another notice for that or not?
Probably not.
Okay.
So watch,
It'll all be on the website.
watch the agendas posted on the website for these meetings.
Okay, Article,
Thank you. Sorry, I was so late.
so the ordinance amendment is off the table.
Can we have a brief? Oh, is it completely off the, so we're not discussing it at all? So tabled it. Okay, never mind. I'll shut up.
Okay. Acknowledge visitors and those wishing to speak. Does anybody else have general comments? Please come forward. Anybody online?
Nope. Then I guess we'll move on to the next item.
Okay, let's move on to any other business.
Nope, I'm just waiting to, I would like to see some legal opinions on some of these things, you know, particularly the bylaws. That started when I was chair and it's gone through Chris's entire term. And we have issues that we're going to be facing as a planning commission real soon that are, some people feel have been handled and other are saying they aren't. So one of them is the hiring of a new planning director. We gave specific direction on how we wanted that handled when we had our previous manager. And now we have a process in place, but I don't think it was actually approved by the township board ever. So I'd like to see this get done and addressed, but I know when I was chair, it took, I think, 5 or 6 months for me to get the legal opinion on bylaws. In fact, I remember Trester Korsnich was treasurer was very upset that I think she felt I was stalling, and I was like, I'm not. It's the bottleneck is somewhere else. So, and this continues to be the situation. So.
I do think the planning commission should have some say in this process.
Well, I think part of the problem is us. We have not spoke up enough to send out the reminders. And I mean, we discussed this at the June meeting, I think, and our bylaws. And then before that, I think it was discussed about a year or so earlier, 8 months earlier. So it's not, I mean, we're all in this together, right? I'm not trying to blame people. We certainly, I'm making noise because we certainly need to make this happen. And I know we tabled it for a reason, but what I guess I'm saying is I don't want it to be forgotten because it's getting forgotten. It's been 4 years.
Well, this is somebody we have to work with on a regular basis, and I think we should have some say in who is selected. How many applications do we have at this point? Madison?
2 or 3.
Okay.
I agree with everything you guys have said, but I think my concern is it sounded like there's not even a piece of material and there's Article 10, there's nothing, there's no meat. I think the concept of stripping out bylaws without a approved set of bylaws that's going to replace it. If we're going to pull it out.
We
what
drafted
replaces it?
those. We've drafted those bylaws. We have them.
They have never, I don't believe they've ever gone to a board vote though.
And they were supposed to. In fact, I think they were part of the process recommendations for.
So the long
I could not find them. I did a long look last year and I never saw anywhere that they were part of the agenda and actually voted on and been reflected in the minutes. I could be wrong.
So having done a couple
There
of
was
startups,
couple board members got real upset that they were there.
I would be very much opposed to stripping out bylaws and not having other bylaws approved, to be a bylawless organization.
Well,
That's not what
that's not what they're advocating.
The bylaws from the ordinance, I think was what they're gonna do.
2 separate documents.
Right.
Correct, but that's not the bylaws that we want, right?
Your existing bylaws are the ones that are gonna be separated from the ordinance based on what the legal opinion.
But that's a waste of
Whatever
time
those
because we've
existing
got
ones are.
different bylaws that we want. So why wouldn't we approve the new bylaws and remove the old and move on? Why would you separate out something you don't?
Well,
even
we
want?
can't see the problem we ran into before, and I think this is where it stalled, is that our bylaws are currently part of chapter 23 zoning ordinance. So we can approve draft bylaws,
but it requires a zoning ordinance amendment for those to come and become effective. Okay, and there was a huge list of zoning amendments, such as taking the word commercial off the compost. Or, I mean, we've been making lists all year, but we haven't actually had anything come through. And so there's a whole bunch of these little corrections and typos and things. And unfortunately, I can't remember all of them, and I'm guessing all of you can't remember all of them, but the bylaws is just one of a whole host of issues. But you can't, so we've already kind of approved draft bylaws, but we can't implement them until we modify the zoning ordinance to allow for us to have bylaws outside of chapter 23.
But you can't do it as one activity?
Well, I think that was the plan.
I'd be supportive of that. That's what I'm
I don't
saying.
know. I think we're waiting on a legal opinion to really direct us on this, right? I mean, isn't that kind of?
Mr. Homey, our township attorney, was reviewing some other things and noted that and said this should not be in here. It should be moved outside of the zoning.
Bylaws.
The bylaw. So the ones we have, the ones we've been working on, everything we've been operating on are inside the zoning. They need to be, they just need to be split.
See, I hear you, but I respectfully disagree. There are bylaws inside chapter 23. Hold on, no. You're not listening to I'm not saying that they shouldn't be in there.
Thank you.
But you're saying what's in there is what we've agreed to. It's not. When I first came on the board, they have a whole bunch of.
We've been operating on for years.
Could probably-
It needs to be split.
Separated.
They just have to be separated.
That's all.
Well, and
Let the record reflect that member Rob has left.
Yeah,
that's all.
just 10 minutes too. Okay,
I didn't know if he left or went to the bathroom.
I don't know.
I think, well,
It's
Just note that he's gone.
His mentor's still here. I think he went to the restroom would be my guess.
Okay.
all right. Any other business?
One other, Madison, I think we would all like a copy, the first memo, of that issue that we talked about earlier. Regarding the cemetery statutes by council.
Yeah.
We didn't have tonight.
Yeah,
You can just shoot
I'll
that
forward
around.
it to you guys in the morning.
That's great, one that you wanted.
Yep, and I'll be the proxy for other new material. Our chair emeritus or chair in absence or whatever. So
Chris,
Vice
Chair?
had recommended we start contemplating the next chair, vice chair, like I think it was a text or an email. So just reminding everybody of that. I don't know what he actually wanted us to do, start talking about it or.
Yeah, generally we just have a conversation outside the meeting if we want to collaborate around somebody, but I mean, generally speaking, typically the vice chair moves up to chair and the chair retires, or sometimes I've seen it where the chair becomes vice chair, they switch spots. Sometimes the secretary steps up, but really the question is, I guess for me, is does the vice chair want to be chair?
Oh, I hadn't thought of that. I am willing to serve in that position.
Thank you.
That's an
Thank you.
answer to a different question.
Yeah, but I mean, there's generally a order in which we go through, so maybe bigger question to me would be, I would assume that if the vice chair becomes chair, I would assume the secretary would become vice chair. Then there's a vacancy in the secretary position that we would probably need to find a person to fill if we just moved everybody up a spot, unless our current chair came down as secretary, so.
And does anybody know Chris's opinion on that? Is Chris interested in?
I don't know. I'd have to ask him.
As far as I know, he's going to stay on the planning commission, but I don't know if he wants to take a particular position of leadership.
Right. I mean, I'm open. I've had all of those positions, so I'm more than willing to serve in any of them, but if I'm still here, so.
Okay. Just on another issue, we have a meeting of the Farmland Preservation Subcommittee on Thursday morning at 8:30.
I think it's Wednesday, isn't it? Is it Thursday?
It's Thursday.
Okay.
It's Thursday at 8:30.
I'll be quiet.
And we moved that back 1 hour so that we could attend the Kent County presentation in this building at 10 a.m. that same day. So our meeting can go maybe an hour and a quarter, and then we can zip over here and attend that.
Is this a hint?
I had,
I said, is this a hint that I need to make sure we only take an hour and a quarter at our meeting?
well, at 9:45, I'll say, can we adjourn?
That'll work.
Okay, the other thing is, I want to thank those of you who attended my open house. We had a great turnout and a lot of good comments back about what they saw in the Michigan history and all that. So thank you all for coming. And if you ever want to bring kids on a private basis, you don't have to wait for the next open house. Just elbow me or give me a call and say, hey, can I bring over the kids or the grandkids or whatever? We'll get you involved. So I get visitors all the time.
I'll let you know, I don't have any kids at home or grandkids. So next time you're open up, let me know. I'd love to come. I was out of town.
Okay, okay.
It's
Yeah.
worth it. That's what I hear. I really want to come.
It's amazing.
Yeah, it's Michigan history, 3,600 trees.
That's very cool.
Okay, with that, can we have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support. And supported. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
What's that?